The boy was bleeding when he walked into the garage. Not from a knife, not from a fist, from something worse. The kind of wound that doesn't show on skin but drips through everything you touch. 13 years old, soaked to the bone, dragging a backpack that weighed more than hope across cracked asphalt, while freezing rain turned the world to glass outside Tulsa. Inside, 7 men in leather cuts stopped working. Tattoos, scars, eyes that had seen things the world pretends don't exist. The kid pointed at a dead motorcycle buried under 20 years of dust and said 5 words that changed everything. That bike belonged to my grandfather. Nobody moved, because they all knew that name, and they all knew why he disappeared. Before we ride into this storm together, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. You're gonna need to stay until the end of this one. I promise you, this story doesn't go where you think. The Thunder Saints Motorcycle Club didn't advertise. No website. No signs along Highway 66. Just a dying garage with boarded windows and a hand-painted logo so faded you had to know it was there to see it at all. The kind of place decent people drove past without slowing down, especially after dark, especially when the row of Harleys sat parked outside like a warning written in chrome and gasoline. Eli Mercer stood in the doorway dripping rainwater onto concrete that hadn't been swept in months, maybe years. His sneakers were held together with duct tape. His jeans had holes that weren't fashionable. The backpack slung over one shoulder looked older than he was, canvas stained with oil and something that might have been blood, but probably wasn't his. Behind him, lightning split the Oklahoma sky and turned the rain to silver needles. Nobody inside the garage spoke. They just watched. 7 bikers in various states of work, one under a lifted Harley, greased to his elbows, another bent over an engine block, cigarette hanging from his lips, a third leaning against a rusted workbench with arms crossed and eyes that tracked the kid like a wolf. Tracks movement in tall grass. The radio played low. Something old. Credence. The kind of music that sounds like America used to. Wade Grim Callahan stood near the back, wiping his hands on a rag that was already beyond saving. He was the kind of man who looked like he'd been carved from something harder than stone. Face weathered to leather, beard shot through with gray, eyes the color of bad weather. His hoodie hung heavy with patches that told stories no decent person wanted to hear. President Patch on the front, too many others on the back. He looked at Eli the way you look at a stray dog standing in your yard. Not quite hostile. Not quite kind. "Shop's closed," Grim said. His voice sounded like gravel being dragged across iron. Eli didn't move. Water dripped from his hair, ran down his face, pooled at his feet. "I'm not here for the shop," he said quietly. One of the bikers laughed, short, sharp, mean. The sound died fast when Grim's eyes cut toward him. "Then you're lost," Grim said to the kid. "Highway's that way." Eli shifted the backpack on his shoulder. The weight of it made him lean slightly to one side like a tree that's been bent too long by wind. He reached into his jacket, slowly, carefully, the way you move when you know sudden gestures get you hurt, and pulled out a photograph protected by a Ziploc bag. He held it up. The plastic was clouded with condensation, but the image showed clear enough. A man in his 30s, leather cut, standing beside a Harley with his arm around another biker. Both of them grinning like they'd just gotten away with something. "That's my grandfather," Eli said. His voice didn't shake, but it wanted to. "Daniel Mercer. He rode with you, long time ago." The garage went silent except for the rain hammering the roof and the distant rumble of thunder rolling across the plains. Even the radio seemed quieter, like the music knew to get out of the way. Grim's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Something old. Something that looked like it hurt. "Danny Mercer's dead," one of the other bikers said from somewhere in the shadows, voice flat, statement of fact. "Not yet," Eli said. "VA hospital in Tulsa. Stage 4. Doctors say he's got maybe 2 weeks." He pointed toward the far corner of the garage where darkness pooled thick as oil. There, barely visible beneath a tarp covered in dust and dead leaves that had somehow blown inside over the years, sat the skeleton of a motorcycle, wheels flat, tank rusted, chrome gone to corrosion. "That's his bike," Eli said. 1984 Harley FXR. He told me before they put him on the morphine drip. Said he left it here when he quit the club. Said if I could find it, if I could fix it, The kid's voice finally cracked, just slightly, just enough to show the fracture underneath. He wants to see it run one more time. Nobody spoke. Rain battered the windows. Wind moaned through gaps in the walls. Somewhere deeper in the garage, a compressor kicked on with a mechanical wheeze that sounded like breathing. Grim walked forward slowly, boots heavy on concrete, each step deliberate. He stopped about 6 feet from Eli and studied the photograph for a long moment without reaching for it. "Danny Mercer rode with us for 3 years," Grim said finally. "Good man, solid brother." Then one day he hung up his cut, walked out that door, and never looked back. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't explain. Just gone. "He had a daughter," Eli said. "My mom. He left because he didn't want her growing up around." He gestured vaguely at the garage, at the bikes, at the men standing in shadows. "This." "Smart man," Grim said. No emotion in it, just fact. "My mom's dead," Eli said. "OD'd when I was 9. I've been in 6 foster homes since then. Last one kicked me out 3 days ago. I turn 14 next month, and I got nowhere to go. State says I'm a problem kid. Says I got anger issues. Says nobody wants me." He said it the way you report weather, clinical, detached, like he was talking about someone else. "So you came here," Grim said. "I came here because my grandfather spent the last 4 years trying to find me through the foster system, and he finally did 3 weeks ago. Paid for a bus ticket with money he doesn't have. Said you guys might let me fix his bike. Said maybe." Eli stopped, swallowed hard. "Said maybe if I proved I could do it, you'd let me stay. Bum. Thunder cracked directly overhead. The lights flickered. For a moment, the garage plunged into darkness, and all you could see were the glowing tips of cigarettes like red eyes watching from the void. When the lights came back, Grim was closer, close enough that Eli had to tilt his head back to look him in the face. "You know anything about rebuilding motorcycles?" Grim asked. "My grandfather taught me before they took me away," Eli said. "I know engines. I know tools." "That bike's been sitting dead for 30 years. I know. Probably seized, tanks rusted through, wiring shot. Probably find rat nests in the cylinders." "I know. You're 13 years old." 14 next month," Eli said again. Like it mattered. Grim studied him for a long moment. The kind of look that strips you down to the bones and weighs what's left. "You got 2 days," Grim said finally. 48 hours. You bring that bike back from the dead, we'll talk. You fail, you're gone, and we forget you were ever here. And if I succeed," Grim's expression was unreadable, "then we'll see if you're more like your grandfather than you look." He turned and walked back toward the workbench. Conversation over. Eli stood there, dripping for another moment before one of the other bikers jerked his head toward the dead Harley in the corner. "Tools are in the cabinets," the biker said. His voice was rough, damaged, like he'd screamed himself hoarse once and never recovered. "Coffee's on the hot plate if you want it. Don't touch anything that ain't yours. Don't ask questions. Don't bother anyone. You got 48 hours starting now." Eli walked toward this corner, backpack heavy on his shoulder, water still dripping from his clothes. Behind him, the bikers returned to their work. The sounds of the garage resumed, wrenches clicking, boots scuffing concrete, the radio playing low. Nobody welcomed him. Nobody told him good luck. They just went back to their work like he wasn't there at all. "Ok." Eli pulled the tarp off the motorcycle, and dust exploded into the air, thick enough to choke on. The Harley beneath looked like something dredged from a lake bottom, paint gone to rust, chrome flaked away, tires rotted to black paper. The engine was still there, but covered in grime so thick you couldn't tell what color it used to be. He stood looking at it for a long time, backpack at his feet, hands hanging at his sides. This was impossible. He knew that. A professional mechanic would take weeks to rebuild this thing, maybe months. He was 13, almost 14, with basic knowledge and no money and 2 days. But he also knew something else. He knew if he walked out of this garage, he had nowhere to go. The state would find him within hours and ship him to another foster home, or maybe juvenile detention because he'd run from the last placement, and that was a violation. He knew he'd never see his grandfather again. Knew the old man would die alone in a VA hospital bed, wondering if the kid had even tried. Eli opened his backpack and pulled out the tools inside. Cheap Harbor Freight wrenches, screwdrivers with worn handles, a socket set missing half the pieces. The kinds of tools you buy when you don't have money, but you need to fix things anyway. He set them on the concrete floor in a neat row. Then he got to work. The first 6 hours were brutal. Eli worked in near silence while the other bikers moved around him like he was furniture. Nobody offered advice. Nobody checked his progress. They just worked on their own bikes, smoked their cigarettes, drank their coffee, and occasionally glanced over at the kid kneeling on cold concrete with grease up to his elbows. He started by draining what was left of the oil, thick black sludge that poured out like tar. Then the gas tank. The fuel inside had gone to varnish decades ago, coating the interior with a sticky residue that would need to be dissolved or scraped out by hand. His hands shook from exhaustion, but he didn't stop. Around midnight, one of the bikers walked past and set down a cup of coffee beside him. Didn't say a word. Just put it there and walked away. Eli drank it black and scalding and kept working. By 2 a.m., he had the engine partially disassembled. Cylinder heads off. Pistons exposed. Everything inside was corroded, seized, damaged beyond what he'd expected. He sat back on his heels and stared at the carnage and felt something like despair starting to creep in around the edges. "You're doing it wrong." Eli looked up. The biker who'd set down the coffee stood there now, arms crossed. He was older than the others, maybe 60, maybe older, with a face like worn leather and hands that looked like they'd been broken more than once. His kute had a patch that read, "Torch." "What?" Eli asked. "You're trying to force the pistons," Torch said. "They're seized. You keep yanking on them like that, you're going to snap the connecting rods. Then you're done." Eli looked back at the engine. "What should I do?" Torch didn't answer right away. He pulled a cigarette from behind his ear, lit it, took a long drag. "Penetrating oil," he said finally. "Soak the cylinders, let it sit overnight. Heat the block with a torch tomorrow. Gentle, don't warp anything. Then try again." He turned to walk away. "Why are you helping me?" Eli asked. Torch stopped. Didn't turn around. "I ain't helping you," he said. "I'm helping the bike. That machine deserves better than being murdered by a kid who don't know what he's doing." He walked back into the shadows. Eli sat there for a moment, then found penetrating oil in one of the cabinets and did what Torch said. Soaked the cylinders. Watched the rust-colored liquid seep into gaps and crevices. Set the parts aside to soak. Then he kept working on everything else. Done. Dawn came slow and gray. Rain had stopped, but the sky looked like dirty concrete. Eli hadn't slept. Couldn't. His back screamed, his knuckles were bleeding, his eyes burned from staring at small parts under a single work lamp. But he'd made progress. Tank was cleaned. Hours of work with wire brushes and chemicals that made his eyes water. Wheels were off. Brake system disassembled. Electrical harness laid out across the floor in sections, each wire labeled with masking tape and marker. Around 6 a.m., the garage door opened and 3 more bikers walked in. Fresh coffee. Conversation too quiet to hear. They glanced at Eli once, then ignored him. Grim appeared around 7. He didn't say anything, just walked past the kid, looked at the disassembled motorcycle for a moment, then went to work on something else. Eli kept his head down and worked. By noon, the engine was out of the frame, sitting on a workbench. The penetrating oil had done its job. Pistons still seized, but he could feel movement now, microscopic shifting when he applied pressure the right way. He used a propane torch like Torch had said. Gentle heat. Patient. The metal expanded, the oil worked deeper. And finally, the first piston broke free with a grinding sound that felt like victory. One of the bikers walking past stopped, looked at the engine, looked at Eli. "Huh," the biker said, then kept walking. That was it. No congratulations, no encouragement, just acknowledgement that something had happened. Eli felt it anyway, felt it like warmth in his chest. He pulled the remaining pistons free one by one, laid them out, inspected each piece under the work lamp. Cylinder walls were scored, deep scratches that would affect compression. The rings were trash. Gaskets had fossilized. Bearings were pitted. One of the valves was cracked clean through. This wasn't a rebuild. This was a resurrection, and he had less than 36 hours left. Around 3 p.m., a woman walked into the garage. She wasn't a biker, that much was clear. She wore slacks and a blazer, carried a leather bag, and moved like someone who'd spent time in courtrooms. Her heels clicked on concrete too clean for this place. She found Grim near the back office, and they spoke in low voices. Eli couldn't hear the conversation, but he saw Grim's expression go dark, saw him shake his head, saw the woman pull documents from her bag and set them on the workbench. Grim's voice rose just enough to carry, "Not your concern, Sophia." "It is my concern," the woman, Sophia, shot back. "He's 13. He's homeless. And if CPS finds out you have him here, they won't." What? Wade. She said it like a teacher getting tired of a student's excuses. "I checked. He's flagged in the system. Ran from his last placement. There's an active search. If they find him here and you haven't reported it, you're looking at felony charges. Harboring. Contributing to the delinquency of a minor. They will bury you." Grim was flinching for a long moment. "How long?" he asked finally. "Before they trace him here? I don't know. Could be days, could be hours if someone saw him come in. What do you suggest?" Sophia looked past Grim toward Eli, who was still hunched over the engine, pretending not to listen. "File for emergency guardianship," she said. "I can draft the paperwork tonight. We claim the club is providing temporary shelter while we locate suitable family placement. It's thin, but it'll buy time." "I ain't his guardian," Grim said. "Then he goes back into the system tomorrow," Sophia replied flatly. "And you probably get arrested. Your choice." She left without saying goodbye. Heels clicking, door slamming. Eli kept working, but his hands moved slower now. He'd known this was coming. Known it was too good to be true. 2 days to fix a bike, and somehow everything would work out. That wasn't how the world worked. Not for kids like him. The world didn't work out for kids like him. It just ground them down until there was nothing left. He tried to focus on the engine, but his vision was blurring. Not from tears. He'd learned years ago that tears didn't help anything, but from exhaustion and something heavier that sat in his chest like concrete. "You listening to me, or are you deaf?" Eli looked up. Torch stood there holding a cardboard box. "What?" Eli asked. "I said, you need new gaskets. These are trash." Torch set the box down. Inside were fresh gaskets, new piston rings, and a valve that looked like it came from a parts catalog. "Found them in storage. They'll fit." Eli stared at the parts. "These are expensive." "They're old stock," Torch said. "Been sitting here 20 years. Nobody's using them." "Why?" "You gonna keep asking stupid questions, or are you gonna install them before your time runs out?" Torch walked away. Eli looked down at the parts, then at the engine, then at the clock on the wall. 33 hours left. He got back to work. Night came again. The garage lights flickered on, harsh fluorescent that turned everything sickly yellow. Rain started up again, softer this time, tapping against the roof like fingernails. Eli's whole body hurt. He'd been awake for over 40 hours. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He'd burned himself twice with the torch, cut his palm on a piece of sharp metal, and dropped a wrench on his foot hard enough that he was pretty sure something was broken. But the engine was coming together. New gaskets installed. Piston rings seated. Valves cleaned and lapped. He'd honed the cylinder walls by hand, hours of circular motion with sandpaper and oil until his arm felt like it was going to fall off, but the metal was smooth again. Around 10 p.m., he started reassembling the top end. Cylinder head bolted down. Torque specs checked 3 times with a borrowed gauge, valve covers secured. The engine sat on his bench looking almost like a real machine now, still dirty, still old, but alive in a way it hadn't been before. Eli stepped back and looked at it and felt something dangerous start to bloom in his chest. Something like hope. "Don't celebrate yet." Grim stood in the shadows, arms crossed, watching. "Engine's only half the battle," Grim continued. "You still got electrical, fuel system, transmission, brakes, exhaust. And you got..." He checked his watch. 28 hours. "I know," Eli said. "You know you're probably going to fail, right?" Grim's voice wasn't cruel, just honest. "This ain't a movie. You don't get a miracle ending just because you tried hard." "I know," Eli said again. Grim studied him for a long moment. "Why are you really doing this, kid? And don't tell me it's about the bike. Nobody works like this for a machine." Eli looked down at his grease-stained hands, knuckles bleeding, nails black, scars from burns and cuts. "My grandfather's the only person who ever looked at me like I mattered," Eli said quietly. He found me in the system after 4 years of searching, paid for that bus ticket with money he should have spent on medication. And he told me, Eli stopped, swallowed. He told me I'm not broken. He said the world makes you think you're broken, when really you're just looking for the right place to fit. Grim didn't respond right away. And you think this is that place? He asked finally. I don't know, Eli said honestly, but I got nowhere else to try. Grim was silent for another beat. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A folded piece of paper, worn soft from age. Your grandfather left this when he quit the club, Grim said. He handed it to Eli. The kid unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was shaky, like it had been written in a hurry or by someone whose hands weren't steady. Grim. I'm leaving, but not because I stopped loving my brothers. I'm leaving because I love my daughter more than I love this life. She deserves better than what we are. She deserves a father who comes home. I hope you understand. If I ever have a grandson, if he ever shows up looking lost, give him a chance. Just one. That's all I'm asking. Danny. Eli read it twice, 3 times. His hands started shaking, and it had nothing to do with exhaustion. You knew, Eli said. You knew I was coming. Didn't know when, Grim said. Didn't know if. But yeah, Danny sent letters. 3 of them over the years, all said the same thing. If my family comes, give them a chance. So this whole thing, the 2 days, the test, was real, Grim cut him off. Because a chance ain't a guarantee. You want to stay in this world, you earn it, same as everyone else. He turned to walk away, then stopped. Get some sleep, kid. You're no good to that bike if you collapse. Eli looked at the workbench, at the engine sitting there half-finished, at the clock ticking down. I can't, he said. I don't have time. Grim sighed. 4 hours. I'll wake you myself. You keep going like this, you're going to make a mistake that ruins everything. Before Eli could argue, Torch appeared from somewhere with a rolled-up sleeping bag and a pillow that had seen better days. Floor's cold, but it's flat, Torch said. Don't snore. They walked away. Eli stood there alone in the pool of light from the work lamp, surrounded by tools and parts and the skeleton of a motorcycle that was supposed to save his life, and he realized something. These men, these scarred, dangerous, silent men in leather cuts, were the closest thing to family he'd had in 4 years, and he was terrified of losing them. Quote. 4 hours later, Grim woke him with a nudge from a boot. Time. Eli sat up, every muscle screaming. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. Then it all came rushing back. The garage, the bike, the countdown. He checked the clock. 3 a.m. 24 hours left. He rolled up the sleeping bag, drank cold coffee from a styrofoam cup someone had left beside him, and got back to work. The electrical system was a nightmare. 30-year-old wiring harness, insulation cracked and brittle, connections corroded. He spent 6 hours tracing every wire, replacing what needed replacing, cleaning what could be saved, resoldering connections with a borrowed iron. His eyes burned. His back felt like someone was driving nails into his spine, but the wiring came together piece by piece. By noon, the harness was reinstalled. He connected the battery, old, probably dead, but he had to try. Nothing. He checked connections, tested voltage, traced ground wires. Still nothing. Starter relays probably fried, someone said behind him. Eli turned. One of the younger bikers stood there, maybe 30, covered in tattoos, eyes that looked like they'd seen combat. His patch read, Reaper. I don't have a spare, Eli said. Reaper pulled something from his pocket, small electrical component. Try this. Eli took it. Where did you... Don't ask questions you don't want answered, Reaper said, then walked away. Eli installed the relay, connected the battery again. This time when he hit the starter button, the engine turned over. Slow, grinding, reluctant. But it moved. No spark. No fuel. But it moved. He sat back on his heels and let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. 18 hours left. By evening, the garage had taken on a different energy. More bikers showed up, not club members, just guys who drifted in to work on their own machines or hang around drinking beer and smoking. They glanced at Eli occasionally, watched him work, didn't say much. But Eli noticed something. They stayed longer than they needed to, found excuses to walk past his workspace, left tools where he could reach them. Someone brought fast food and left a burger beside him without comment. Nobody acknowledged it. Nobody made it obvious. But they were watching. And maybe they were hoping. Around 8 p.m., the engine was back in the frame, mounted, aligned, exhaust system connected, fuel lines installed with fresh hose, carburetor rebuilt and adjusted. Eli's hands wouldn't stop shaking now, not from fear, from something else, something that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff knowing you're about to jump. He reconnected the battery, checked fuel flow, confirmed spark. Midnight. 12 hours left. He cleaned his hands on a rag that was already filthy, took a deep breath, and reached for the key. Behind him, the garage had gone quiet. He hadn't noticed but suddenly there were a dozen bikers standing in the shadows watching, not crowding him, just there. Eli turned the key. The engine cranked. Once, twice, coughed, died. He tried again. Crank, cough, sputter, silence. One of the bikers in the back muttered something. Someone else laughed, bitter, not mean. The sound of men who'd seen this story before and knew how it ended. Eli tried a third time. Nothing. He sat there on the bike, hands on the grips, and felt everything start to collapse inside him. 46 hours of work, no sleep, blood and burns and cuts. And it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. Timing's off. Eli looked up. Torch stood there, cigarette between his lips, looking at the engine with a critical eye. "What?" Eli's voice came out hoarse. "Your timing," Torch said. "You installed the cam gear wrong. It's one tooth off. Engine'll crank, but it won't fire." Eli stared at the engine, at all the work he'd done, at the hours he didn't have to tear it apart and fix it. "I don't have time," Eli whispered. "Then you're done," Torch said. Not cruel, just fact. Eli climbed off the bike. His legs barely held him. He walked to the back wall and sat down hard on the concrete floor and put his head in his hands. He'd failed. He'd actually believed, for just a moment, that things could be different, that if he worked hard enough, if he wanted it badly enough, the universe would give him this one thing. But that wasn't how life worked. Life didn't give. It took. And now he had nowhere to go. The bikers stood in silence for a long moment. Then, one by one, they started to leave. Back to their own bikes. Back to their own problems. The show was over. Eli sat there alone on the cold floor while the clock ticked down the final hours and, "Move." Eli looked up through blurry eyes. Grim stood over him. "I said move," Grim repeated. "You're in my way." Eli stood, confused. Grim walked past him to where a rolling toolbox sat against the wall. He pulled it toward the bike. Then Torch appeared on the other side. Then Reaper. Then Sophia, who'd come back and was rolling up her sleeves. Then 3 more bikers whose names Eli didn't even know. They surrounded the Harley. "What are you doing?" Eli asked. Grim looked at him. "You got 9 hours to fix your mistake, but you don't fix family alone." He turned to Torch. "Walk him through it. Make sure he understands why he screwed up so he doesn't do it again." And then they went to work. All of them. The garage exploded with activity. Tools clanging, boots on concrete, voices calling out torque specs and part numbers. Someone fired up the coffee maker. Someone else turned up the radio. Metallica this time, loud and driving. Eli stood frozen for a moment, watching these scarred, dangerous men strip down his mistake and prepare to help him fix it. "You just gonna stand there?" Torch growled. "Get your ass over here. This is your bike. You're doing the work. We're just making sure you don't fuck it up twice." Eli moved, and for the next 9 hours he learned what brotherhood actually meant. The timing chain hung in Eli's hands like a metal snake, cold and unforgiving in the pre-dawn darkness. His fingers trembled, not from fear anymore, but from 48 hours without real sleep, from coffee and adrenaline and something deeper that felt like standing on the edge of a razor blade. Torch leaned over his shoulder, cigarette smoke curling past Eli's face, voice low and rough. "See that mark on the gear? Lines up with the mark on the crank. 1 tooth off and the whole thing's garbage. You understand?" "I understand," Eli said. "Say it back to me." "The cam gear mark lines up with the crank mark. compression stroke, top dead center. And if you fuck it up again? Eli looked at him. Torch's eyes were hard but not cruel. Testing, always testing. Then I don't deserve the bike, Eli said. Torch nodded once, stepped back. Do it. Eli's hands moved slowly, carefully, aligning the marks while his whole body screamed for rest. Behind him, the garage hummed with activity. Grim checking valve clearances, Reaper bleeding the brake lines, Sophia on her phone near the office door speaking in urgent whispers that nobody acknowledged, but everyone heard. The clock on the wall read 6:14 a.m., less than 2 hours. Outside, the sound that had made everyone tense moments ago grew louder. Not the familiar rumble of Harley engines, but something different. Sport bikes, high-pitched and aggressive, like angry hornets circling prey. Eli tried to focus on the timing chain, but his hand slipped. The gear shifted. Wrong alignment. Shit, he whispered. Reset, Torch said calmly. Do it again. But before Eli could move, the garage door shook with 3 heavy impacts. Not a knock. A demand. Everyone stopped working. The radio played low, Leonard Skinnerd ironically asking about being a simple man, while outside the sport bikes revved their engines in a pattern that sounded like mockery. Grim set down his tools slowly, wiped his hands on a rag, looked at Reaper and jerked his head toward the door. Reaper nodded, pulled something from his kute that Eli couldn't see, and walked to the entrance. Keep working, Grim said to Eli without looking at him. You got a job. Finish it. But Eli's hands had frozen on the timing chain, because when Reaper opened the door, 3 men pushed inside, bringing cold air and violence with them. They weren't bikers, not real ones. They wore leather jackets, expensive, store-bought, the kind that had never seen road rash, and moved with the cocky swagger of people who thought intimidation was the same as strength. The leader was maybe 30, face too pretty, teeth too white, tribal tattoos crawling up his neck like they meant something. Grim fucking Callahan, the leader said, grinning. Heard you guys were still squatting in this shithole. Grim didn't move from where he stood by the Harley. Riley, you lost? Nah, man. Just came to give you a heads up. Riley's eyes scanned the garage, landing briefly on Eli before moving on. Word is you got state heat coming your way. CPS, maybe cops. Something about harboring a runaway. The garage went very quiet. Sophia's voice cut through the silence. Who told you that? Riley looked at her and his grin widened. Does it matter? Point is, you got a problem. And problems have a way of becoming everyone's problem if they're not handled right. Get to the point, Grim said. His voice was flat, emotionless, but something in his posture had shifted. Shoulders slightly forward, weight on the balls of his feet. The stance of a man preparing to move fast. Point is simple, Riley said. This garage sits on prime real estate, highway access. Zoning's about to change. Some developers are sniffing around, offering good money for property in this area. He spread his hands. But nobody wants to buy a place with legal complications. Cops, CPS investigations, that kind of thing scares off legitimate buyers. You working for developers now? Grim asked. I'm working for myself, Riley said. Always have been. And I'm saying, hypothetically, if certain problems disappeared, if certain kids got turned over to authorities before things got messy, well, that'd be good for everyone. Eli's stomach dropped. He understood now. This wasn't about the bike. This was about him. Reaper took a step forward. You need to leave. Riley's 2 friends moved closer, but Riley waved them back. Easy, boys. We're all friends here. He looked at Grim. Just giving you fair warning. That kid's flagged in the system. You got maybe 3 hours before they show up with a warrant. You want to protect your club. You know what needs to happen. And if I tell you to go fuck yourself? Grim asked. Riley's smile didn't waver, but something cold entered his eyes. Then you deal with what comes. But remember, you're already on thin ice with the county. One more violation and they'll shut you down permanently. Is some random kid really worth your whole operation? The question hung in the air like smoke. Nobody spoke. Eli looked at Grim, then at the other bikers, then down at the timing chain still in his hands. The metal felt heavier now. Everything felt heavier. Time's up, Riley said. He turned toward the door. Think about it, Grim. 3 hours. Make the smart choice. They left. The door slammed. The sound of sport bikes firing up and tearing away down the highway faded into the early morning. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Sophia spoke, voice tight. He's not bluffing. I just got a call from a contact at the courthouse. CPS filed a recovery order last night. They'll be here with police escort by 9 a.m. How'd they find him? Torch asked. Does it matter? Sophia replied. Someone talked. Maybe the bus driver. Maybe someone at the VA who remembered Danny mentioning this place. Maybe Riley's been watching and made a call himself. Point is, they know he's here. All eyes turned to Eli. The kid stood there holding the timing chain covered in grease, exhausted beyond words, and suddenly very aware that he was the problem everyone was discussing. I can leave, Eli said quietly. Before they get here, I'll go. Go where? Grim asked. I don't know. Somewhere. You'll last maybe 6 hours on your own before someone picks you up, Sophia said. Not unkindly, just fact. You're 13, you have no money, and every cop in the state has your description. Then what am I supposed to do? Eli's voice cracked slightly. I can't stay here. You heard him. They'll shut you down because of me. Grim was silent for a long moment. Then he walked to the workbench, picked up a wrench, turned it over in his hands like he was looking for an answer in the metal. Finish the bike, he said finally. What? You got 90 minutes left on your deadline. Finish the fucking bike. But, did I stutter? Grim's eyes locked onto Eli's. You came here with a job. Do it. Eli looked around at the other bikers. None of them met his eyes. Torch had turned away, lighting another cigarette. Reaper was checking his phone. Sophia stood by the office with her arms crossed, face unreadable. Nobody was arguing with Grim. Nobody was standing up for Eli either. The kid turned back to the motorcycle and felt something cold settling in his chest. He'd been stupid to think this would work. Stupid to believe these men gave a shit about him beyond what he could do with a wrench. His grandfather had been wrong. There was no place for him here. There was no place for him anywhere. But he'd finish the bike anyway. Because that's what you did when you had nothing left. You finished the job and you walked away. Eli installed the timing chain with hands that had stopped shaking because there was nothing left to be nervous about. The marks aligned. The tension was set. The cover went back on. 80 minutes left. Around him, the garage had resumed work, but the energy was different now. Heavier. Everyone moving through their tasks mechanically, not looking at each other, not speaking unless necessary. Eli reinstalled the valve cover, torqued the bolts, connected the fuel lines, checked the carburetor settings one more time, 60 minutes. He bled the brakes while Torch handed him tools in silence, adjusted the clutch, checked the throttle cables. 45 minutes. The sky outside was getting lighter, gray dawn creeping across the Oklahoma plains. In the distance, thunder rumbled, more rain coming. Eli climbed onto the bike. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. His hands rested on the grips, and for just a moment he let himself remember why he'd come here in the first place. His grandfather dying in a hospital bed. The old man's voice hoarse from morphine. Find the Thunder Saints. Tell them you're my blood. They'll give you a chance. Some chance. Eli reached for the key. The garage had gone silent again. Every biker standing somewhere in the shadows watching, not hoping anymore, just witnessing, the way you witness a car accident, something terrible you can't look away from. Eli turned the key. The engine cranked once, twice, caught, coughed, held. The Harley roared to life. The sound was massive, primal, angry, beautiful. It shook the concrete floor, rattled the windows, filled the entire garage with noise that felt like resurrection. The bike was alive. Eli sat there on the running motorcycle, feeling it vibrate beneath him, hearing the engine settle into a rough idle that would need tuning but was there. And something broke open in his chest that he'd been holding closed for 4 years. Behind him, nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated. They just stood in silence while the kid they were about to abandon sat on a motorcycle he'd brought back from the dead, knowing it didn't matter. Knowing it was never going to be enough. Eli shut off the engine. The silence that followed felt like the end of everything. It runs, he said to no one in particular. His voice was hollow. Grim walked forward slowly. He put one hand on the gas tank, leaned down, inspected the engine. Timing sounds right, he said finally. Compression's good. No smoke. He straightened up and looked at Eli. You did it.
Yeah, Eli said. I did. In 47 hours. Yeah. Grim nodded slowly. Your grandfather would be proud.
The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt like a eulogy. Eli climbed off the bike. He was so tired he could barely stand. I should go pack my stuff. Pack for what? Grim asked. For wherever I'm going next, Eli said. You can tell CPS I was here, but I ran before you could stop me. That way they can't charge you with anything. He started walking toward the corner where his backpack sat, but Grim's voice stopped him. You think that's how this works? Eli turned around. I don't know how this works, but I know Riley was right. You don't risk your whole club for some kid you barely know. You're wrong, Grim said. About what?
About barely knowing you. Grim walked closer. I watched you for 2 days. Watched you work through exhaustion most grown men couldn't handle.
Watched you take advice from men who didn't make it easy. Watched you fail and get back up and keep going even when you knew it was probably hopeless. He stopped a few feet away. I know exactly who you are, Grim continued. You're your grandfather's blood, and he was my brother. So that makes you family. And we don't abandon family. Eli stared at him. CPS is coming. The cops are coming. They'll shut you down. Maybe, Grim said. Or maybe we fight. You can't fight the state. Watch me. Sophia stepped forward then. Actually, she said, there might be a way. Everyone looked at her. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through something, then looked up. Emergency guardianship was never going to hold. But there's another option. We file for kinship placement. We're not kin, Grim said. No, but Danny Mercer was. And he specified in his last will, yes, he had one I checked with the VA, that if anything happened to him and his daughter, he wanted his MC family to have custody rights to any descendants. It's not standard, but it's documented. Combined with Eli's voluntary presence here, and the fact that he has no other living relatives, we can make a case. A case isn't a guarantee, Torch said. No, Sophia agreed, but it's a fight. And if we're lucky, if we get the right judge, if we present this correctly. She looked at Eli. The kid might have a shot. Eli felt something dangerous stirring in his chest again. That thing he'd tried to kill. Hope. How long would that take? Grim asked. Hearing could be scheduled for next week if I push, Sophia said. But we need to keep him safe until then, which means when CPS shows up in... She checked her watch. 38 minutes. We need to be ready. Ready how? Reaper asked. We cooperate, Sophia said. We don't hide him. We don't fight the initial removal. We let them take him to emergency foster placement. No. Eli said immediately. The word came out harder than he intended. No. I'm not going back in the system. O aquí. It's temporary, Sophia said. 3, maybe 4 days max until the hearing. You don't understand, Eli said. His voice was shaking now. You don't know what those places are like. What happens in those places? He saw something flicker across the bikers' faces. Recognition. Understanding. These were men who knew exactly what institutions could do to kids. He's right, Torch said quietly. He can't go back in there. Then what do you suggest? Sophia asked. We hide him? Make this into a federal case? That's how we lose everything. The argument that followed was sharp and fast, voices rising, everyone talking over each other. Grim trying to maintain order, Sophia insisting on legal procedure, Torch arguing for protection above all else. And Eli stood in the middle of it watching these men, these dangerous, damaged, complicated men, tear themselves apart, trying to figure out how to save him. He couldn't let that happen. Stop, Eli said. Nobody heard him. Stop! He shouted it this time. The garage went quiet. Eli looked at each of them. I'll go with CPS. I'll do whatever Sophia says. He swallowed hard. Just promise me something. What? Grim asked. Promise me you'll come to the hearing, stand up in court and say you want me here. Even if it doesn't work. Even if the judge says no, just, let me know you tried. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Finally, Grim spoke. We'll be there. Eli nodded, didn't trust himself to say anything else. 20 minutes later, the sound of vehicles pulling up outside made everyone tense. Doors slamming, radio chatter, the heavy footsteps of people who carried authority and paperwork. Sophia straightened her blazer. Let me do the talking. Everyone stay calm. Don't give them any reason to escalate. The garage door opened and 3 people walked in. 2 police officers and a woman in business casual carrying a tablet and a look that said she'd seen too many situations like this and didn't expect. Anything good? Wade Callahan? The woman said. That's me, Grim replied. I'm Sharon Vickers, Child Protective Services. We have a recovery order for Eli Mercer. She looked around the garage until her eyes landed on the kid. Eli, honey, we need you to come with us. Eli didn't move immediately. He looked at the Harley sitting there, engine still warm, chrome reflecting the fluorescent lights. Then at the bikers standing in a loose semicircle around him. Warriors in leather cuts with hard faces and harder lives who'd spent 2 days teaching him what family was supposed to look like. Can I say goodbye? Eli asked quietly. Sharon's expression softened slightly. Of course. Eli walked to where his backpack sat in the corner. Picked it up. It felt lighter now. He'd used most of the tools, and everything else that mattered he'd already left behind in this garage. Torch was closest. Eli stopped in front of him. Thank you, Eli said, for the coffee, and the parts, and teaching me the timing. Torch didn't respond, just reached out and gripped Eli's shoulder once, hard, then let go. Reaper gave him a small nod. No words, just acknowledgement. Sophia pressed a business card into his hand. You call me if anything happens. Anything. I'll have my phone on 24/7 until the hearing. Grim was last. He looked down at Eli for a long moment. Your grandfather would be proud, he said again, and so am I. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled the patch off his coot, not the president patch, something smaller that had been sewn near the bottom, and held it out. It was old, faded, the thread coming loose in places. Just 3 words. Thunder Saints, MC. This was Danny's, Grim said. Gave it back when he left. Told me to keep it safe until someone in his family earned the right to wear it. He pressed it into Eli's palm and closed the kid's fingers around it. You earned it, Grim said quietly. Eli looked down at the patch, then up at Grim, and felt tears burning behind his eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these men who'd shown him what strength actually looked like. I'll see you at the hearing, Eli said. Yeah, Grim replied. You will, sit. Eli walked to the door where Sharon and the police officers waited. As he stepped outside into the gray morning, he heard the sound of motorcycle engines starting behind him. One by one, the Thunder Saints firing up their Harleys in a rumbling salute that followed him all the way to the CPS van. He didn't look back. Couldn't. Because if he looked back, he'd see what he was losing, and if he saw that he'd break, and he couldn't afford to break. Not yet. The van door closed. The engine started, and as they pulled away from the garage, Eli pressed his forehead against the cold window and watched the building disappear into the Oklahoma. Morning, while his fingers clutched the patch Grim had given him hard enough that the edges cut into his palm. The foster home they took him to was called Meadowbrook Group Residence. The name was cheerful. The reality wasn't. It sat on the outskirts of Tulsa in a neighborhood where all the houses looked the same. Vinyl siding, dead lawns, chain-link fences. The building itself was a converted 2-story that probably used to be someone's family home before it became a warehouse for kids nobody wanted. Sharon walked him inside, handed paperwork to a tired-looking woman with a name tag that read supervisor, and gave Eli one last sympathetic look before leaving him there. The supervisor, her name was Mrs. Hendricks, showed him to a room on the second floor that he'd share with 2 other boys. Bunk beds, linoleum floor. One window with bars on the outside that somebody had probably installed to keep kids from climbing out, but looked like a prison. Dinner's at 6, Mrs. Hendricks said. Chores rotation is on the kitchen wall. No fighting, no stealing, no leaving the property. You violate rules, you go to juvenile detention. Understand? Yes, ma'am, Eli said. She left him alone in the room. Eli dropped his backpack on the floor and sat on the lower bunk. The mattress was thin, plastic covered, the kind that made noise every time you moved. He could hear voices through the walls, other kids arguing, a TV playing too loud, somebody crying. He pulled out the patch Grim had given him and stared at it. Thunder Saints MC 3 days. He could survive 3 days. Then the hearing. Then maybe, he could go back to the garage and the men who'd shown him what brotherhood looked like. That night at dinner, he met his roommates. One was 15, tall and rangy with dead eyes and scars on his arms that told a story Eli didn't want to know. The other was 12, smaller than Eli, with a nervous energy that made him talk too fast and laugh too loud at nothing. The older one's name was Marcus. The younger was Kyle. "Fresh meat," Marcus said when Eli sat down at their table. "How long you in for?" "Just a few days," Eli said, waiting on a court hearing. Marcus laughed. "That's what they all say. You'll be here for months, man. Maybe years. This place is a black hole." "My situation's different," Eli said quietly. "Everyone's situation is different," Marcus replied, "and everyone ends up the same, stuck." Eli didn't respond. Just ate the institutional food, something that was supposed to be meatloaf but tasted like cardboard, and tried to ignore the way Kyle kept staring at his backpack like he was calculating what might be inside worth stealing. That night, Eli lay awake on the narrow bunk listening to the sounds of the group home. Footsteps in the hallway, a door slamming, someone yelling, the house settling with creaks and groans that sounded almost like breathing. He took out the patch again, ran his fingers over the worn fabric, imagined he could still smell motor oil and cigarette smoke from the garage. 3 days. He could do 3 days. Okay. The first day wasn't bad. Eli kept his head down, did his assigned chores, didn't make eye contact with anyone. The staff mostly ignored the kids unless someone started a fight or broke something obvious. The other residents moved through the house like ghosts, present but not really there, just existing until they aged out, or got placed somewhere else, or ended up in the system's darker corners. Eli spent most of his time in his room, door closed, counting hours. The second day started the same. Morning came gray and cold. He got dressed, went downstairs for breakfast, sat in his usual corner. That's when Marcus decided Eli was worth his attention. "Yo, fresh meat," Marcus said, sitting down across from him. "You got something in that backpack you've been guarding like it's gold." "Just tools?" Eli said. "Tools? For fixing bikes." Marcus's expression shifted, interested now. "You a mechanic?" "Learning, Marcus leaned back. "My uncle used to ride. Had an old Suzuki he kept in his garage. Thing never worked right, but he loved it anyway." It was the first real conversation Eli had heard from anyone in this place. Human, almost normal. "What happened to it?" Eli asked. "He died," Marcus said flatly. "OD'd 3 years ago. Bike probably got sold for scrap." "I'm sorry." Marcus shrugged. "It is what it is." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Kyle appeared, nervous as always, looking around like he expected someone to jump him. "Mrs. Hendricks is asking for you," Kyle said to Marcus. "What'd I do now?" "I don't know. She just said come to her office." Marcus stood, gave Eli one last look. "Don't let anyone mess with your stuff. Kids here are vultures." He walked away. Kyle sat down in his place and immediately started talking rapid fire. "You really only here for a few days? Because Marcus has been here for 2 years, and David, he's the big kid with the tattoos, he's been here since he was 10 and he's 17 now. Some kids never leave. They just age out, and then they're on the street. And—" "Kyle," Eli interrupted, "I appreciate the warning, but I'm getting out." Kyle looked at him with something like pity. "That's what everyone says." That afternoon, Sophia called. The hearing was scheduled for the following day at 2 p.m. She'd filed all the paperwork. Grim and the Thunder Saints would be there. Everything was in place. "How are you holding up?" Sophia asked. "I'm fine," Eli lied. "Eli, I need you to be honest with me. If anything happens, nothing's happening. I'm fine. I'll see you tomorrow." He hung up before she could press further. That night, after lights out, Eli lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow. Just one more day. Then the hearing. Then freedom or failure. He fell asleep clutching the patch. Udichig. He woke to the sound of his backpack unzipping. The room was dark. The digital clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m., and Kyle was crouched beside Eli's bunk, hands inside the backpack, rifling through the tools. Eli moved fast. He grabbed Kyle's wrist, hard. "What the fuck are you doing?" Eli's voice was low, dangerous. Kyle jerked back, eyes wide. You were stealing my shit." "No, I was just looking." Eli sat up, still gripping Kyle's wrist. "Those tools are all I have. You understand? They're the only thing that matters. Let go, you're hurting me. Promise me you won't touch them again." I promise, just let go." Eli released him. Kyle scrambled back to his bunk, breathing hard, rubbing his wrist. From the top bunk, Marcus's voice came out of the darkness. "Told you he'd catch you." "Shut up," Kyle hissed. "You're an idiot," Marcus continued. "Fresh meat's got more edge than you think." Silence settled over the room again. Eli lay back down but didn't close his eyes. He moved the backpack under his head like a pillow, one hand resting on it. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. Bikik. Morning came slow. Eli got dressed, went through the motions of breakfast, avoided everyone. The hearing was in 6 hours. Sophia was picking him up at 1:30. He just had to make it until then. At noon, Mrs. Hendricks called him to her office. "There's been a complication," she said when he sat down. Eli's stomach dropped. "What kind of complication?" "Your attorney called. The judge handling your case has a family emergency. The hearing's been postponed." The world tilted sideways. "For how long?" Eli managed to ask. "They're trying to get it rescheduled for next week, maybe Monday." "That's 5 more days." "I understand this is frustrating." "You don't understand shit," Eli said. The words came out harder than he intended, but he didn't care anymore. "I need to get out of here. Eli, I know you're upset, but you don't know anything about me." He stood up. "Can I go?" Mrs. Hendricks looked at him for a long moment. "Yes, but watch your attitude. You're on thin ice." Eli walked out. He made it to the second-floor bathroom before the shaking started. He locked himself in a stall and sat on the closed toilet lid with his head in his hands and felt everything he'd been holding together start to crack. 5 more days. He couldn't do 5 more days. His phone, the cheap prepaid Sophia had given him, buzzed in his pocket. Text from Grim. "Heard about the delay. You okay?" Eli stared at the message, typed back, "Yeah." Another buzz. "Don't believe you. Call me." Eli's hands were shaking too hard to dial. He just sat there in the bathroom stall while time stretched out like a prison sentence and tried to figure out how the hell he was going to survive another 5 days in this place. That's when he heard voices in the hallway outside. Said he's got tools worth money. "How much you think?" "Doesn't matter. Fresh meat's not going to last the week anyway." Eli recognized one of the voices. David, the 17-year-old with tattoos the kid Marcus had warned him about. They were talking about him, about his tools. Eli stood slowly, unlocked the stall, walked to the sink and splashed cold water on his face. In the mirror, he looked like a ghost, pale, exhausted, barely holding on. He thought about what Grim had said. "You're your grandfather's blood." He thought about what Torch had taught him. You don't finish family alone. And he realized something. These people weren't his family. This place wasn't his home. And if he stayed here much longer, it was going to break him. So he made a decision. He walked back to his room, grabbed his backpack, and left through the window with the bars that someone, probably another kid years ago, had already loosened enough to squeeze through. He hit the ground outside, stumbled, caught himself, and started running. Behind him, Meadowbrook Group residents sat silent and dark. Just another building full of lost kids in a city that didn't care. Ahead of him, somewhere in the Oklahoma night, was a garage full of dangerous men who'd shown him what protection actually looked like. Eli ran toward them and didn't look back. The streets of Tulsa at 3 in the morning looked like the end of the world. Eli ran through pools of orange streetlight and stretches of darkness so thick he couldn't see his own feet hitting pavement. His backpack slammed against his spine with every stride, the tools inside clanging together in a rhythm that sounded like alarm bells. His lungs burned, his legs screamed, but he didn't stop. Behind him, maybe 6 blocks back, maybe closer, he heard the high-pitched scream of sport bike engines cutting through the night. They'd found him faster than he'd expected. Eli cut through an alley between abandoned storefronts, jumping over trash bags and broken pallets, emerging onto another empty street. The highway was somewhere ahead. If he could make it to Highway 66, he could follow it back to the garage. 3 miles, maybe 4. He could run that. He had to run that. His phone buzzed in his pocket for the 15th time. He ignored it. Answering meant stopping, and stopping meant getting caught, and getting caught meant going back to Meadowbrook, or worse. The sport bikes were getting closer. He could hear them splitting up, circling, hunting. Eli's sneakers hit a patch of ice, and his feet went out from under him. He crashed hard onto concrete, rolled, felt skin tear from his palms. The backpack absorbed most of the impact, but something inside cracked. Probably a wrench handle, maybe worse. He scrambled to his feet, limping now, tasting copper in his mouth where he'd bitten his tongue. The sound of an engine closing in from his left made him pivot right. Another alley. This one narrower, darker, ending at a chain-link fence about 8 feet high. Eli hit the fence running and climbed. His damaged hand slipped on cold metal, but adrenaline pushed him up and over. He dropped to the other side, landing in what looked like the back lot of an auto salvage yard. Rows of dead cars stacked like corpses, weeds growing through cracked asphalt, a single security light buzzing somewhere in the distance. He crouched behind a rusted pickup truck and tried to catch his breath. The sport bike circled the block once, twice, their engines echoing off brick walls. Then silence. Eli waited, every muscle tensed, counting heartbeats. Nothing. He pulled out his phone. 23 missed calls, 12 from Sophia, 8 from a number he didn't recognize, 3 from Grim. He called Grim back. 1 ring. "Where the fuck are you?" Grim's voice was sharp, wide awake despite the hour. "I ran," Eli whispered, "from the group home. I couldn't stay there." "Oh, Jesus Christ, kid, do you have any idea what you just did? You violated your placement. They'll issue a warrant. The hearing's off the table now." "I know, I'm sorry. Eli's voice cracked. "I couldn't do 5 more days in that place." Silence on the other end. Then Grim exhaled slowly. "Where are you right now?" "Salvage yard off Porter Avenue, maybe 2 miles from you." "Stay there. Don't move. I'm coming to get you." But there are people looking for me," Eli said. "Riley's guys, they're on sport bikes. They almost caught me 3 times. Another pause. Longer this time. When Grim spoke again, his voice had gone cold. "How many?" "I saw 3 bikes. Maybe more." "Did they see you go into the salvage yard?" "I don't think so." "You better pray they didn't. Stay hidden. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The line went dead. Eli sat with his back against the truck, knees pulled to his chest, shaking from cold and exhaustion and fear. His palms were bleeding where he'd scraped them. His jeans were torn at the knee. The backpack felt heavier than it had any right to. He thought about his grandfather lying in a hospital bed somewhere, morphine drip running, waiting for a grandson who was probably going to end up in juvenile detention instead of at his bedside. He thought about the Harley sitting in the garage, the bike he'd brought back to life, the bike that was supposed to mean something. He thought about the patch in his pocket with his grandfather's name sewn into it. Earned, not given. What a fucking joke. He was about to pull the patch out and look at it again when he heard footsteps. Not boots. Sneakers. Moving quiet through the salvage yard. Multiple sets. Eli froze. A voice cut through the darkness. Young, male, amused. "Come on out, fresh meat. We know you're here." Riley. Eli stayed pressed against the truck, barely breathing. "Your phone's GPS is on," Riley continued. "Did you really think you could run? We've been tracking you since you left that shithole group home." Footsteps coming closer. "Honestly, I'm impressed. Most kids your age would have called for help by now. But you? You just kept running. That takes balls." Eli's hand found a piece of rebar lying in the weeds beside him. Heavy, rusted. He gripped it tight. "Here's the thing," Riley said, voice conversational, like they were discussing weather. "You got something people want. Information. Your grandfather talked before he got too doped up to remember his own name. Told the wrong people about certain things the Thunder Saints did back in the day. Things that could put some important folks in very uncomfortable positions." Eli's blood ran cold. "So now we got a problem," Riley continued, "because you're Danny Mercer's grandson, which means you might know things, or you might figure things out, and we can't have that. The footsteps stopped maybe 20 feet away, on the other side of the truck. "Come out now and this goes easy," Riley said. "Stay hidden, and when we find you, and we will find you, it goes hard. Your choice, kid." Eli's grip tightened on the rebar. His whole body was shaking, but he forced himself to think. Grim was 10 minutes out, maybe less now. If he could stay hidden for just a few more minutes. Something metallic clicked, the sound of a safety being released. "I'm counting to 5, Riley said. 1 bomb. Eli looked around desperately. Nowhere to run. The fence behind him, dead cars everywhere else. 2. His phone buzzed. Text from Grim. 3 minutes out. Stay quiet. 3. Eli could see shadows moving, 3 figures spreading out, triangulating his position. 4. He stood up. "Smart move," Riley said. He was younger up close, maybe 25, with that pretty boy face that made you want to hit it. 2 guys flanked him, both bigger, both carrying something Eli couldn't see clearly in the darkness, but looked like weapons. Riley held up his phone. "See? GPS. You ran right to us like a good little rabbit." He pocketed the phone and pulled out a knife instead. Folding blade, 6 inches, caught the security light and gleamed. "Now, let's talk about what your grandfather told you." "He didn't tell me anything," Eli said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "He's barely conscious. They've got him on morphine around the clock." "But before that," Riley pressed, "before the drugs. He talked to you, right? About the old days, about the club." "He told me stories, writing stories, nothing important." "Bullshit." Riley took a step closer. Danny Mercer knew where bodies were buried. Literally. He was there when the Thunder Saints were more than just a social club, when they moved product, when they cleaned up problems for people who paid well. Eli kept his face blank. "I don't know what you're talking about. See? I don't believe you." Riley was close enough now that Eli could smell cologne mixed with cigarette smoke. "I think Danny told you exactly where those bodies are. And I think that information makes you either very valuable or very dangerous. Haven't decided which yet." That's when Eli heard it. Distant but unmistakable. The rumble of Harley engines. Multiple Harleys, coming fast. Riley heard it too. His expression shifted, just slightly, but Eli saw it. Worry. Maybe fear. "Time's up," Riley said. He lunged forward, knife out. Eli swung the rebar. It connected with Riley's forearm with a crack that sounded like breaking wood. The knife went flying. Riley screamed and staggered back, clutching his arm. The 2 bigger guys rushed forward, but Eli was already moving. He dropped the rebar, grabbed his backpack, and ran. Behind him, chaos erupted. The Harley engines roared into the salvage yard. Shouts, the sound of bikes skidding on gravel. Someone firing a gun, not at Eli, at something else. And the sharp crack echoed off metal car frames. Eli didn't look back, just ran toward the sound of those beautiful, brutal engines until hands grabbed him from the darkness and pulled him sideways behind a rusted van. Torch and Reaper, both armed, both looking like they'd been ready for war. "Stay down," Torch growled. More gunfire, return fire, the sharp metallic ping of bullets hitting steel. Then Grim's voice cutting through everything. "Enough!" The shooting stopped. Eli peered around the van. Grim stood in the middle of the salvage yard with his Harley idling beside him, backlit by headlights from 5 other bikes. He looked like something out of a nightmare. Leather cut, beard, eyes that had gone flat and cold and dangerous. Riley was on his knees, still clutching his broken arm, flanked by his 2 guys who looked significantly less confident now that they were outnumbered and outgunned. "You made a mistake," Grim said quietly. "Fuck you," Riley spat. "This ain't over." "Yeah, it is." Grim walked closer. "You came after one of mine. You brought guns into a hunt for a 13-year-old kid. You crossed every line. That kid knows things. I don't give a shit what he knows." Grim's voice was still quiet, but it carried weight like thunder. "You put your hands on him, you answer to me." Riley laughed. It sounded wet, pained. "You think you scare me, old man? You think the Thunder Saints still mean something? You're a joke, a relic. This city moved on 20 years ago and left you behind." Grim studied him for a moment. Then he looked past Riley toward his 2 guys. Leave. Now. Before I decide you're as guilty as he is. Oh, they didn't need to be told twice. They walked backwards slowly, hands up, then turned and ran. Riley struggled to his feet.
This isn't done. Grim moved faster than someone his age should be able to move. One hand shot out, grabbed Riley by the throat, lifted him slightly so they were eye to eye.
Listen very carefully, Grim said. You're going to walk away from here. You're going to forget that kid exists. And if I ever see you near him again, I will personally make sure they never find enough of you to identify. He released Riley. The younger man stumbled, gasping, clutching his throat with his good hand. Get the fuck out of my city, Grim said. Riley ran. The sound of a sport bike starting up somewhere outside the yard, engine screaming, then fading into the distance. Silence settled over the salvage yard like snow. Grim turned toward where Eli was still hidden behind the van. You can come out now. Eli stood on shaking legs. Torch and Reaper stepped aside. Eli stood. The other bikers, 4 more that Eli recognized from the garage, stood in a loose perimeter, watching the exits, still armed. You all right? Grim asked. Eli nodded, didn't trust his voice. He hurt you? No, I hit him first. Something flickered in Grim's expression, not quite a smile. With what? Rebar. This time, it was definitely a smile. Grim looked at Torch. Kid's got instincts. Kid's got a death wish, Torch muttered, but his tone was almost approving. Grim turned back to Eli. You violated your placement. CPS has issued a warrant. The hearing's off. You understand what that means? I destroyed my chances, Eli said quietly. Yeah, you did. Grim walked closer. You also made yourself a target. Riley wasn't lying about one thing. Someone thinks you know something dangerous, which means coming back to the garage isn't safe anymore. Eli felt something break inside him. So where do I go? Grim was silent for a long moment. The other bikers stood in shadows, watching, waiting for their president to make the call. Finally, Grim spoke. We're going to the hospital. Your grandfather's running out of time and he deserves to see you before he goes. After that, he paused. After that, we figure out what the hell is really going on. Because Riley was right about something else too. Your grandfather knew things, and somebody's scared those things are going to surface. What things? Eli asked. That's what we're going to find out. The VA hospital was a concrete block building on the east side of Tulsa that looked like it had been designed by people who hated both architecture and veterans. Fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, the smell of disinfectant failing to cover other smells nobody wanted to think about. Grim led the way through automatic doors while Eli followed, flanked by Torch and Reaper. The other bikers stayed outside with the motorcycles. The woman at the front desk took one look at their leather cuts and picked up the phone. We're here to see Daniel Mercer, Grim said before she could dial. Hospice wing. His grandson needs to say goodbye. The woman hesitated. Visiting hours don't start until... His grandson, Grim repeated, voice flat, is saying goodbye. Tonight. You can either tell us which room or we'll find it ourselves. Something in his tone made her put down the phone. 4th floor, room 417. They took the elevator in silence. Eli's hands were still shaking. He shoved them in his pocket so nobody would see. The 4th floor was quieter, dimmer. The lights turned down for night. A nurse's station sat unmanned at the far end of the hall. Room 417 was 3rd door on the left. Grim stopped outside. You want us to wait out here or come in? Come in, Eli said immediately. He didn't want to face this alone. The room was small. 1 bed, 1 window looking out at nothing. Machines beeping softly. And in the bed, barely visible under white sheets, was the man Eli had been searching for since he was 9 years old. Daniel Mercer looked like he weighed 90 pounds. Skin stretched over bone, breathing shallow. An oxygen tube under his nose. Eyes closed. Eli walked to the bedside slowly. He pulled out the patch from his pocket, the one Grim had given him, and set it on the nightstand where his grandfather could see it if he woke up. Grandpa, Eli said quietly. It's me. Eli. No response, just the steady beep of the heart monitor. I fixed your bike, Eli continued. His voice was shaking now. Took me 2 days, but I got it running. Sounds good. Needs some tuning, but it's alive. Daniel's eyes flickered behind closed lids. The Thunder Saints helped me, Eli said. They're here with me now. Grim, Torch, Reaper. They're good men. You were right about them. Daniel's hand moved slightly on the sheets. Eli grabbed it. The fingers were cold, thin as twigs. I need you to tell me something, Eli said. Riley, this guy who's after me, he says you told people about things the club did. About bodies. About the old days. Did you? For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Daniel's eyes opened. Barely, just slits. But he was looking at Eli. His lips moved. No sound came out at first. Then barely a whisper. Protect you? Protect me from what? Eli leaned closer. Daniel's grip tightened slightly. His eyes shifted past Eli toward where Grim stood in the shadows. Tell him, Daniel whispered. Tell him. Sorry. Then his eyes closed again. His breathing evened out. He was gone back into whatever place the morphine took him. Eli looked at Grim. What's he talking about? Grim's expression was unreadable. I don't know. But Eli saw something flicker behind his eyes, something that looked like guilt. You're lying, Eli said. Kid, what did my grandfather do? Eli's voice rose. What did you do? The room went very quiet. Even the machines seemed to hold their breath. Finally, Grim spoke. Not here. We'll talk outside. No, here. Now. Torch stepped forward. Eli, this ain't the time. He's dying, Eli shouted. And people are trying to kill me because of something that happened before I was even born. I deserve to know what the fuck is going on. Grim looked at the old man in the bed for a long moment. Then he walked to the door, checked the hallway, closed the door again. When he turned back, his face had aged 10 years. 28 years ago, Grim said quietly. The Thunder Saints weren't what we are now. We were young, angry. We moved drugs, ran protection rackets, did enforcement work for people who paid well. Your grandfather was part of that. One of the best riders we had. Loyal, smart. He paused. There was a job. A bad one. Some businessman got sideways with the wrong people, needed to disappear. We got paid 10 grand to make that happen. Eli felt his stomach turn to ice. Danny drove, Grim continued. I pulled the trigger. 3 other brothers helped dispose of the body. We buried him in a field outside the city. Nobody ever found him. Nobody ever would have. The heart monitor beeped steadily in the silence that followed. But Danny couldn't live with it, Grim said. Started drinking, having nightmares. Then his daughter was born, and he saw her face and he couldn't do it anymore, couldn't be that person. So he quit, hung up his cut, walked away. And you let him? Eli asked. We didn't have a choice. He knew where the bodies were, literally. If we came after him, he could have destroyed all of us. So we made a deal. He keeps his mouth shut, we leave his family alone. For 28 years, that deal held. Until now, Eli said. Until now. Grim looked at Daniel. 6 months ago, Danny got diagnosed. Terminal. Started getting his affairs in order. Someone, we don't know who, got word that he was talking to lawyers, making statements, trying to clear his conscience before he died. Jesus Christ, Eli whispered. The people who paid us back then are still around, Grim said. Still powerful, still connected. And if Danny's testimony goes public, it destroys them. So they sent Riley to find out how much you know, to see if Danny passed the information on to you before he died. But I don't know anything, Eli said. Doesn't matter. You're his blood. Your leverage. Eli looked at his grandfather lying there dying. This man who'd killed someone, who'd walked away from violence but could never wash the blood off his hands, who'd spent 28 years trying to build a decent life for his daughter, only to watch her die of an overdose anyway. Why didn't you tell me? Eli asked. Because you were a kid trying to fix a motorcycle, Grim said. You didn't need to carry this weight. And now? Now you don't have a choice. The door opened. One of the nurses stood there looking annoyed. Visiting hours are over. You all need to leave. We're almost done, Grim said. Now, the nurse repeated firmly. They filed out. Eli took one last look at his grandfather, then followed the others into the hallway. They were halfway to the elevator when Eli's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Check your email. He pulled up his email. One new message. No subject. No sender name. Just an attachment. A video file. Eli hit play. The footage was grainy, shot from a distance, but clear enough. It showed Grim and two other bikers standing in what looked like a warehouse. And kneeling in front of them, hands bound, was a man in a business suit. The timestamp read 28 years ago. Eli watched as Grim raised a gun. He closed the video before it showed anything else. His hands were shaking so hard he almost dropped the phone. Eli? Torch's voice. You okay? Paul. Eli looked up at Grim. The man who'd given him a chance, who'd helped him rebuild his grandfather's bike, who'd saved his life an hour ago in a salvage yard, the man who'd murdered someone in cold blood. Who sent you that video? Grim asked. His voice was careful, controlled. I don't know. Let me see the phone. Eli held it away. Why did you really help me? Was it guilt? Or were you making sure I didn't find out the truth? Eli, answer the question. Grim's jaw tightened. Both. The elevator doors opened. Empty car. They got in. The doors closed, descended in silence. When they reached the lobby, Sophia was waiting. She looked exhausted, furious. Do you have any idea what you've done? She said to Eli. Running from placement? You've got warrants out. Felony charges are on the table. I can't fix this. I need to know something. Eli interrupted. He looked at Sophia. Did my grandfather hire you to file for guardianship? Or did Grim? Sophia hesitated just for a second, but it was enough. Grim hired you, Eli said. Before I even showed up, you were already working for the club. That doesn't change the fact that I was trying to help you. Help me or make sure I stayed close where you could control me? Eli's voice was rising. Make sure I didn't find out what really happened? People in the lobby were staring now. The security guard near the front desk was paying attention. We need to leave, Torch said quietly. But Eli wasn't done. He turned to Grim. My grandfather left because he couldn't live with what you made him do. And you've been scared for 28 years that he'd talk. So when I showed up, his grandson, the only family he had left, you saw an opportunity. Keep me close. Keep me grateful. Make sure I never learned the truth. That's not what happened, Grim said. Then what happened? We wanted to protect you, Saab. Bullshit, Eli was shouting now. You wanted to protect yourselves. I was just another problem to manage. The security guard started walking toward them. Folks, I need you to lower your voices or take this outside. That's when the front doors exploded inward. Not metaphorically, actually exploded. The glass shattered in a spray of crystal shards. People screamed. Something metal clanged across the floor, a flash grenade. Eli had maybe half a second to register what it was before the world turned white and sound disappeared into high-pitched ringing. He felt hands grabbing him, dragging him. He couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't fight back. His feet scraped across broken glass. Cold air hit his face. They were outside. An engine roaring, being thrown into the back of a vehicle. Doors slamming, tires screaming on asphalt. And as his vision started to clear, as the ringing in his ears faded to something almost bearable, Eli realized two things. One, he wasn't in the Thunder Saints van. He was in the back of a black SUV with tinted windows and the smell of expensive leather. Two, the person sitting beside him wasn't Riley. It was a woman, maybe 50, business suit, cold eyes, and a syringe in her hand. Hello, Eli, she said calmly. We need to have a conversation about your grandfather's testimony. This will go much easier if you cooperate. She moved fast. The needle went into his arm before he could pull away. The world started to blur. The last thing Eli saw before everything went dark was the woman's face leaning close, and her voice, distant now, echoing, saying something that sounded like, your grandfather didn't just bury one body, and you're going to tell us where the rest are. Then nothing, just darkness, and the sound of his own heartbeat slowing down. Consciousness came back in pieces. First, the taste of copper and chemicals, blood and whatever they'd used to knock him out. Second, cold. Not winter cold, industrial cold. Concrete floor against his cheek. Metal somewhere close. The smell of oil and rust. Third, pain. His head throbbing. His arm where the needle had gone in feeling like someone had poured acid under his skin. Eli opened his eyes. He was in a warehouse. Old, abandoned. High ceilings with exposed beams. Windows 20 feet up, covered in grime that turned daylight into something gray and dead. The floor beneath him was stained concrete, cracked in places, with dark patches that could have been oil or blood or both. His hands were zip-tied behind his back. His backpack was gone. His phone was gone. The patch his grandfather had given him, the Thunder Saints patch, was gone. Everything was gone. He tried to sit up. His head swam, but he managed to get to his knees, then to his feet. The warehouse was massive. Rows of empty shelving units, a rusted forklift in one corner, loading dock doors at the far end, all closed. And 20 feet away, sitting in a folding chair like she was waiting for a bus, was the woman from the SUV. She looked different in the gray light, older, harder. The business suit was gone, replaced by dark jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than Eli had ever owned in his life. Her hair was pulled back tight, no makeup, no jewelry, just cold efficiency. "You're awake," she said. Not a question, statement of fact. Eli didn't respond, just looked around for exits. The loading dock doors. A regular door near the back. Windows too high to reach. No obvious way out. "Don't bother," the woman said. "This building is in the middle of nowhere, 20 miles outside Tulsa. Nobody's coming." "The Thunder Saints will find me," Eli said. His voice came out rough, damaged. "Eventually, but not before we're done here." She stood up, walked closer. "My name is Catherine Voss. 28 years ago, your grandfather and his motorcycle club murdered my husband." The words hung in the air like smoke. Eli stared at her. "You're lying." David Voss, business consultant. 42 years old, father of 2. He got involved with the wrong people, owed money he couldn't pay, and the Thunder Saints were hired to make him disappear. Catherine's voice was flat, emotionless. They took him to a field outside the city, shot him twice in the head, and buried him in an unmarked grave. No funeral, no closure. Just gone. "That's not—" "Your grandfather drove the van," Catherine continued. "Wade Callahan pulled the trigger. 3 other members helped dispose of the body. I've spent 28 years looking for proof, looking for the grave site, looking for justice." She pulled something from her pocket, a small digital recorder, pressed play. Daniel Mercer's voice, weak and morphine-slurred, came through the speaker. "Buried him near the old grain silo, off Route 33, 3 miles past the railroad crossing, marked it with a piece of rebar. Drove in at an angle." Catherine stopped the recording. "Your grandfather gave me this 2 weeks ago, before the morphine took him completely. He wanted to clear his conscience before he died." Eli felt like the floor was tilting. "So you have what you need. Why take me?" "Because there were other bodies," Catherine said. "Your grandfather mentioned them but wouldn't give locations. Said he'd only tell family. Said his grandson would know how to find the information when the time came." "I don't know anything," Eli said. "I think you do, even if you don't realize it yet." She walked to a table Eli hadn't noticed before. On it sat his backpack. She unzipped it, pulled out the tools one by one, laid them across the table like surgical instruments. "Your grandfather gave you these tools," Catherine said. "Old tools, specific tools. Some of them don't make sense for motorcycle repair." She held up a geology hammer. "Why would a mechanic carry this?" Eli's mind was racing. He'd never questioned the tools. They'd been in the backpack when his grandfather gave it to him. He'd just assumed they were random. Catherine set down the hammer and picked up something else. A compass. Military grade. Old. "This compass has coordinates scratched on the back," she said. "Faint, almost worn away, but still there." She showed it to him. Eli squinted. There were numbers etched into the metal, barely visible. 36.1477 minus 96.0314. "Those are GPS coordinates," Catherine said. "Leading to another burial site. Another body. Another family that deserves closure." You want me to help you dig up graves," Eli said slowly. "I want you to help me find truth," Catherine corrected. "And in exchange, I won't destroy the Thunder Saints. I have evidence, video, recordings, testimony, that could put Wade Callahan and 3 other members in prison for the rest of their lives. But if you help me find the remaining sites, I'll bury that evidence instead. Why should I believe you?" Because I'm not interested in revenge against a dying old man or a motorcycle club that's trying to go straight. I'm interested in bringing my husband home and giving him a proper burial, and letting my children, who are adults now, with children of their own, have a place to mourn their father. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, just slightly, but enough to show the wound beneath. Eli looked at her, really looked at her, saw the exhaustion, the decades of grief, the desperation masked as control. The Thunder Saints are looking for me, Eli said.
When they find us, people die, Catherine interrupted. Your biker family comes in loud and violent and someone gets hurt. Probably you, probably me, probably some of them.
Is that what you want?
I want to go home. Then help me finish this. We find the sites. I recover my husband and whoever else your grandfather buried. You go back to your bikers. Everyone walks away. And if I say no?
Catherine pulled out a phone, showed him the screen. It was a live feed, security camera footage of the VA hospital, specifically room 417. Daniel Mercer's room.
I have people there, Catherine said quietly.
If I make one call, your grandfather dies early, pillow over his face, looks like natural causes. Nobody questions it. Eli's blood turned to ice.
You wouldn't. I've spent 28 years hunting the men who murdered my husband, Catherine said. You think I won't do what's necessary?
The warehouse was silent except for the wind moaning through gaps in the walls. Eli looked at the tools spread across the table, looked at the compass with coordinates scratched into the back, looked at this woman who'd lost everything and spent 3 decades trying to find pieces of what was taken from her. If I help you, Eli said slowly, you leave the Thunder Saints alone, all of them. No charges, no evidence released, nothing. You have my word. Your word means shit. Catherine almost smiled. Fair enough. Then let's make it a contract. She pulled out a piece of paper, already typed up, legal language. Signed statement saying I won't pursue criminal charges against the Thunder Saints in exchange for information leading to the recovery of David Voss and any other victims. Notarized. Legally binding.
So, you came prepared. I've been planning this for 28 years, Catherine said. Yes, I came prepared.
Eli read the document. It looked legitimate, but he wasn't a lawyer. He didn't know if this would hold up, didn't know if he could trust her, but he knew one thing. If he didn't do this, his grandfather died, and probably Eli too. Cut these zip ties, Eli said. I'll show you where to start looking. Catherine pulled out a knife, sliced through the plastic. Eli's hands came free. He rubbed his wrists where the ties had cut into skin. The coordinates on the compass, Eli said. That's the first site, but there are others. My grandfather used to tell me stories when I was little, before they took me away. Stories about riding, about landmarks, about places that mattered. He picked up the compass, turned it over in his hands. He always said if I got lost, I should look for 3 things: water, metal, and stone. I thought he meant survival skills, but maybe he was telling you how to find the graves, Catherine finished. Eli nodded slowly. There's a map in the garage, old topographical map of the area. My grandfather marked it years ago with maintenance routes for the club, but I'm betting those marks mean something else. Then we're going to the garage, Catherine said. No, you'll get killed the second you walk through that door. Then you go alone. Get the map. Bring it back. They won't let me leave once I'm there. Catherine thought for a moment, then pulled out her phone. Made a call. When she spoke, her voice had changed, harder, colder, the voice of someone used to giving orders. Bring the van around. We're moving. She hung up, looked at Eli. We do this together, but my people come with us. Insurance. How many people? 4 trained, armed, but they won't start shooting unless your bikers do. They'll start shooting the second they see you. Then we better make sure they don't see us, Catherine said. The van was unmarked, black, tinted windows. Catherine sat in the passenger seat while Eli was shoved into the back between 2 men who looked like they'd done time in military or private security, both armed, both silent. The driver pulled out of the warehouse and onto a rural highway. Oklahoma countryside rolled past, flat, empty, gray under clouded sky. Eli's mind was racing. He needed to warn Grimm, needed to let the Thunder Saints know what was happening. But his phone was gone, and these people weren't stupid enough to let him near communications. "Where's the garage from here?" Catherine asked without turning around. 20 minutes south, Eli said. "But you can't just drive up. They'll have lookouts, cameras. They'll see you coming."
"Then how do we get the map?"
Eli thought fast. "There's a back entrance. Leads through the auto salvage yard next door. If I go in alone through there, I can get to the map without anyone knowing." "And how do I know you won't warn them?" "Because you have people at the hospital," Eli said flatly. "And because I want this over as much as you do." Catherine was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Fine, but you have 10 minutes. If you're not back, we come in loud. Give me 20. 15. And if you try anything, remember, I make one call and your grandfather suffocates in his sleep." The rest of the drive passed in tense silence. Eli watched the landscape, trying to figure out how the hell he was going to pull this off. He needed the map, but he also needed to warn Grimm without Catherine knowing. They pulled off the highway onto a service road. The salvage yard appeared on the left, same chain-link fence Eli had climbed the night before. The Thunder Saints garage was visible beyond it, maybe 200 yards away. The van stopped. 15 minutes, Catherine said. "Starting now." Eli climbed out. One of the security guys handed him a phone. Cheap burner, probably untraceable. "Call when you have the map," the guy said, "or call if you're in trouble and need extraction." "I thought you said no communications," Eli said to Catherine. "This phone only calls one number," she replied. "Mine. Don't try anything clever." Eli pocketed the burner and started walking toward the fence. Behind him, the van pulled away, disappearing down the service road to wait somewhere less visible. The salvage yard was quiet. Early afternoon, nobody around. Eli climbed the fence, easier this time without people chasing him, and dropped to the other side. The garage was 50 yards ahead. 2 Harleys parked outside. Lights on inside. The sound of somebody working metal on metal echoing across the cold afternoon. Eli moved carefully, staying low, using rusted cars for cover. He reached the back of the garage and found the door he knew was there. Old, warped wood that didn't quite close right. He slipped inside. The garage was dimly lit. Most of the bikers were gone, probably out looking for him. But Torch was there, bent over an engine, cigarette between his lips. And near the office, Sophia sat at a desk covered in paperwork, phone pressed to her ear. Eli moved quietly toward the back corner, where the old topographical map hung on the wall behind a filing cabinet. He was 3 feet away when Torch spoke without looking up. "You got some fucking nerve showing your face here." Eli froze. Torch straightened slowly, turned around. His expression was unreadable. "You ran. You accused us of using you. You made Grimm look like a liar in front of everyone." "I was wrong," Eli said quietly. "Yeah, you were." Torch walked closer. "But you're also 13 and scared and way the fuck over your head. So I'm going to ask you once. Why are you here?" "I need the map, the old topographical one." "Why?" "Because I'm trying to save everyone, including you. See." Torch studied him for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. "Grimm needs to know you're here." "No, not yet, please." "Kid, Torch." Eli's voice cracked. "I need you to trust me for 15 minutes. That's all. 15 minutes, and I can fix this." Something in his tone made Torch pause. He looked at Eli, really looked at him, and saw the exhaustion, the fear, the desperation. "What are you into?" Torch asked quietly. "Something bigger than us. But I have a way out. I just need that map." Torch was silent. Then he walked to the filing cabinet, pulled it away from the wall, and revealed the map. It was old, yellowed, covered in pencil marks and notes. "This it?" Torch asked. "Yeah." Torch pulled it down, rolled it up, handed it to Eli. "You got 5 minutes to explain what the fuck is going on before I call Grimm." "I can't. Not yet." Then you're not leaving with that map. Eli's hand went to his pocket where the burner phone sat. If he called Catherine now, her people would come in shooting. Torch would die. Maybe Sophia too. There's a woman, Eli said finally. Her husband was one of the people my grandfather helped bury. She's been hunting the Thunder Saints for 28 years. She has video evidence, recordings, everything she needs to put you all in prison. Torch's expression went cold. Where is she? What? Doesn't matter. What matters is I made a deal. I help her find the graves, she buries the evidence. Everyone walks away. And you trust her? I don't have a choice. Torch pulled out a gun, not pointing it at Eli, just holding it. You're walking into a trap. Probably, but if I don't, she kills my grandfather and destroys the club. So I'm walking into it anyway. The two of them stood there in the dim garage, the map between them, the weight of impossible choices pressing down. Finally, Torch lowered the gun. You're either the bravest kid I ever met, or the dumbest. Can't it be both? Torch almost smiled. Then he reached into his cut and pulled out something small, a GPS tracker. Hide this in your shoe, Torch said. We'll know where you are. You get in trouble. We come running. She'll find it. Then hide it better. Eli took the tracker, slipped it into his sock, deep down near his heel where it wouldn't be obvious. Thank you, Eli said. Don't thank me yet, Torch replied. You might not survive what's coming. Eli turned to leave, then stopped. The bike. My grandfather's Harley. If I don't make it back, you're making it back, Torch said firmly. Now get the fuck out of here before I change my mind. Eli slipped out the back door, map rolled under his arm, and ran. Mads. Catherine was waiting when Eli climbed back over the fence. The van pulled up immediately. He climbed in, handed her the map. She unrolled it across her lap, studying the marks. Her finger traced routes, circles, small X's scattered across the landscape. These are burial sites, she said quietly. I think so, but I don't know which is which. Then we start with the coordinates from the compass and work backward. She looked at the driver. Route 33, 3 miles past the railroad crossing. Look for an old grain silo. The van moved. Eli sat in the back, feeling the GPS tracker pressing against his heel, and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. They drove for 20 minutes in silence. The landscape outside turned rural. Fields, abandoned buildings, rust-colored dirt. Finally, the grain silo appeared on the horizon. Massive, concrete, slowly being reclaimed by weeds and weather. The van stopped on the side of the road. There, Catherine said, pointing to a field about 300 yards from the silo. That's where the coordinates lead. They got out. The security team spread out in a perimeter while Catherine pulled a small ground-penetrating radar unit from the van. Professional equipment. Expensive. You've done this before, Eli said. I've been preparing for this moment for 28 years, Ching, Catherine replied. Yes, I've done this before. They walked into the field. The ground was hard, frozen, covered in dead grass. Catherine swept the radar unit back and forth, watching the screen. After 10 minutes, the unit beeped. Here, she said quietly. There's something here. 2 of the security guys started digging, shovels biting into frozen earth. The sound echoed across the empty field like a bell tolling. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. The hole got deeper. Then one of the shovels hit something that wasn't dirt. Fabric. Rotted. Black. Catherine knelt at the edge of the hole. Her hands shook as she reached down, brushed away soil. A skull appeared. Human. Weather-worn. Catherine made a sound, something between a sob and a gasp. She pulled back, sat hard on the frozen ground. David, she whispered. One of her security guys climbed into the hole carefully, started excavating with gloved hands. More bones appeared, fragments of clothing, a watch still attached to a skeletal wrist. Catherine stood, walked away, pressed a hand to her mouth. Eli stood watching, feeling sick, feeling like he'd crossed a line he could never uncross. This was real. These weren't stories. This was a man who'd been murdered and buried and forgotten while his family spent 3 decades wondering. We need to keep going,
Catherine said after a moment. Her voice was steady again.
Professional. There are more sites. We document this one, move to the next. They spent 2 hours photographing, tagging, carefully excavating. Catherine made calls, discreetly, to people Eli couldn't identify. Probably lawyers. Probably authorities she trusted. By the time they were done, the sun was getting low, cold winds sweeping across the field. Next site, Catherine said. She checked the map. There's a mark 15 miles west, near an old quarry. They loaded back into the van. As they drove, Eli felt his phone, the burner, vibrate in his pocket. He pulled it out carefully. One text. From a number he didn't recognize, but he knew who it was. We're tracking you. When you need us, we'll be there. T-Torch. Eli deleted the message and pocketed the phone. The second site was harder to find. The quarry had been abandoned for decades, slowly filling with water and debris. But Catherine's radar found something near the edge. Another grave, shallower this time. As they dug, darkness fell. The security team set up lights. The scene looked surreal, bright white LED against black sky, shadows dancing across broken ground. This body was more recent, not David Voss, someone else. The bones were still partially connected, scraps of denim, a belt buckle with initials, JR. Who's JR? Eli asked. Catherine checked notes on her phone. James Ridley. Went missing 16 years ago. Small-time drug dealer. Nobody looked too hard when he disappeared. My grandfather killed him? Your grandfather's club did. Whether he pulled the trigger or just drove, I don't know, but he knew where the body was. They documented the site, took photos. Catherine made more calls. By the time they finished, it was past midnight. One more, Catherine said. According to the map, there's a mark north of here, Old Industrial Park. We've been doing this for 8 hours, Eli said. Your people are exhausted. Yeah. One more, Catherine repeated. Her voice allowed no argument. We finished this tonight. The van drove north. Eli felt the weight of everything pressing down. 3 graves. 3 families who'd lost someone. 3 murders his grandfather had been part of. And the Thunder Saints, his family now, had done this, had taken money and ended lives and buried the evidence in Oklahoma dirt. How was he supposed to come back from knowing that? The industrial park was a maze of abandoned warehouses and rusted equipment. Catherine's radar led them to a spot behind a collapsed loading dock. This grave was different, deeper, older. They'd been digging for 20 minutes when one of the security guys stopped. There's more than one, he said. Catherine came closer. What? The radar showing multiple masses, at least 3, maybe more. The color drained from Catherine's face. Keep digging. They dug. And as the hole got deeper, bones appeared. Not 1 skeleton, not 2, 5, buried together. Some wrapped in plastic, some just there. Catherine stared into the pit and something broke in her expression. This wasn't about debts, she whispered. This was something else. One of the security guys climbed into the hole, started carefully moving soil. He uncovered something small. Metal. A badge. Police badge. Jesus Christ, someone muttered. Catherine's phone rang. She answered, listened, went pale. We need to leave, she said. Now. What's wrong? Someone's coming. Multiple vehicles, moving fast toward our location. The Thunder Saints? Eli asked. I don't know. But we're exposed here. Everyone in the van. Now. They scrambled. Loading tools, equipment, the security team covering their retreat. They were 50 feet from the van when headlights cut through the darkness. Not from the road, from inside the industrial park. Multiple vehicles, SUVs, moving fast. Run! Catherine shouted. They ran, but more headlights appeared from another direction, cutting off the road, surrounding them. The vehicles screeched to a stop. Doors opened. Men got out. Not cops, not bikers. Men in tactical gear. Professional. Military-grade weapons. And walking through the center of them came a man in an expensive suit who looked like he owned things. Businesses, politicians, lives. He stopped 20 feet away, looked at Catherine, and smiled. Mrs. Voss, he said pleasantly, you've been very busy tonight.
Catherine's hand went to her weapon, but 3 red laser sights immediately appeared on her chest. "Don't," the man said. "Please, let's keep this civil." He looked at Eli. "And you must be Daniel Mercer's grandson, the boy who's caused everyone so much trouble." "Who the fuck are you?" Eli asked. "Robert Hendricks, state senator. And 28 years ago, I paid the Thunder Saints a considerable amount of money to solve several problems for me." He gestured toward this pit behind them. "Those problems are still buried back there, along with evidence that could end my career and send me to prison for the rest of my life. So you can understand why I'm very interested in making sure tonight's excavations don't make it to the authorities." "You're too late, Catherine said. "I already called. Ostoko. You called lawyers, private investigators, people you trust, but not the police, because you wanted to control the narrative." Hendricks smiled. "That was a mistake." He pulled out his phone, showed them a video feed. The VA hospital. Room 417, Daniel Mercer's room. And standing beside the bed was one of Hendricks' men, holding a pillow. "Here's what's going to happen," Hendricks said. "You're going to give me that map. You're going to hand over all your evidence, photos, recordings, everything. And then you're going to disappear, all of you. If I hear one word about tonight, if anything surfaces about those graves, your grandfather dies. Followed by everyone you care about." He looked at Catherine. "That includes your children, your grandchildren, everyone. You can't—" Catherine started. "I'm a state senator," Hendricks interrupted. "I have resources you can't imagine. Money, connections. I've buried more problems than you've had hot meals, Mrs. Voss. You think you're the first person to threaten me?" The industrial park was silent, except for wind moving through rusted metal. Then, in the distance, a sound, faint at first, growing louder. Motorcycle engines, not sport bikes, Harleys, multiple Harleys. Coming fast. Hendricks' expression shifted. "What is that?" The engines got louder, closer. Then headlights appeared from 3 different directions, converging on the industrial park. The Thunder Saints. At least 20 bikes. Maybe more. Roaring through gaps in fences, across broken pavement, surrounding Hendricks' vehicles in a circle of chrome and fury. The bikes stopped, engines idling, thunder in the darkness. And Grimm climbed off his Harley, followed by Torch, Reaper, and a dozen other bikers Eli recognized, and some he didn't. "Senator Hendricks," Grimm said, his voice carried across the cold night air. "You're on our territory, threatening our family. That's a problem." Hendricks laughed. "Your territory? You're a washed-up motorcycle club. I own this city." "You own politicians," Grimm interrupted. "You own cops. You own courtrooms. But you don't own us. And you sure as hell don't touch that kid." Hendricks' men raised their weapons. The bikers didn't move, just stood there in leather cuts, outnumbered, outgunned, and completely unflinching. "You want a war?" Hendricks asked. "Because I promise you, we already had one," Grimm said, 28 years ago. "You paid us to bury bodies, and we did it because we were young and stupid and thought money mattered more than souls. But we're not those men anymore." He took a step forward. "And that kid standing next to Mrs. Voss? He's family. So here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to walk away. You're going to let us handle the evidence. And you're going to pray we're feeling merciful." "Or what?" Hendricks asked. Grimm smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Or every one of us has a copy of every piece of evidence Mrs. Voss has collected. Photos, recordings, video, all of it. Set to automatically upload to federal authorities if anything happens to us. You kill one of us, you kill yourself." Hendricks' face went white. "You're bluffing. Try me." The standoff stretched, tension thick enough to choke on. Weapons raised, engines rumbling, everyone waiting for someone to make the first move. Then Torch stepped forward. "We also called the FBI. They'll be here in about—" He checked his watch. 3 minutes. You want to be standing here when they arrive, Senator?" Hendricks' jaw clenched. He looked at his men, looked at the bikers, looked at the pit full of bodies behind them. "This isn't over," he said. "Yeah," Grimm replied. "It is." Hendricks got back in his SUV. His men followed. The vehicles pulled out, headlights cutting through darkness, disappearing into the Oklahoma night. The second they were gone,
Grim walked straight to Eli. You okay? He asked. Eli nodded, couldn't speak. Grim pulled him into a rough hug. Don't ever fucking scare me like that again. Behind them, Catherine Voss stood watching the bikers with something like shock on her face. You called the FBI? She asked. No, Torch said, lighting a cigarette. But he didn't know that. Sirens rose in the distance. Real ones this time. Now we did, Grim said. Sophia made the call 10 minutes ago. Real FBI. Real evidence. Real consequences. He looked at Catherine. You wanted justice, Mrs. Voss. You're about to get it. So, the FBI arrived with 4 vehicles and enough agents to secure a war zone. They separated everyone. Bikers, Catherine's team, Eli. Took statements, photographed the gravesite, started processing evidence. An agent approached Grim. Wade Callahan? That's me. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and accessory after the fact. She read him his rights while pulling out handcuffs. Grim didn't resist, just looked at Eli. You did good, kid. Your grandfather would be proud. They cuffed him, led him to a vehicle. Then they did the same to Torch, to Reaper, to 3 other bikers whose names Eli had just learned. Everyone who'd been part of those murders 28 years ago. Everyone who'd helped bury secrets in Oklahoma dirt. Sophia appeared beside Eli as they watched the arrests. This is it, she said quietly. End of the road for them. For how long? Eli asked. Years, maybe decades, if all the charges stick. Eli watched Grim being loaded into the back of an FBI vehicle. The old biker looked through the window, met Eli's eyes, and nodded once. Then he was gone. The industrial park slowly emptied. Evidence teams working through the night. Catherine Voss giving her statement to agents who looked at her like she'd accomplished something impossible. And Eli stood alone in the cold, watching his family, the only real family he'd ever known, being taken away one by one. Finally, an agent approached him. Eli Mercer? Yeah, we need your statement. And then, she paused. CPS has been notified. They're sending someone to take you back into custody. Back to the group home? Probably, until they figure out what to do with you. Eli looked around the industrial park, at the pit full of bones, at the FBI vehicles, at the Thunder Saints Harleys sitting abandoned like tombstones. Can I see my grandfather first? Eli asked. Before I go back. The agent hesitated, then nodded. 1 hour. Then you have to turn yourself in. Boom. The hospital corridor smelled like death pretending to be sterile. Eli walked past the nurse's station at 3 a.m. with an FBI agent trailing 10 feet behind. His footsteps echoed on linoleum that had been mopped 1,000 times but never quite came clean. Room 417 sat at the end of the hall, door half open, machines beeping their steady rhythm like a countdown nobody wanted to hear. Daniel Mercer looked smaller than he had 2 days ago, like something inside him had already left and the body was just waiting for permission to follow. Eli stood in the doorway for a long moment before walking in. The agent stayed outside, giving him privacy, but close enough to prevent escape. Not that Eli had anywhere to run anymore. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. His grandfather's hand lay on top of the white sheets, thin as paper, veins dark beneath translucent skin. Eli took it carefully, afraid it might break. It's me, Eli said quietly. It's over. We found them. All of them. Daniel's eyes opened slowly. Recognition flickered there, mixed with morphine haze and something that looked like relief. Grim? Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Arrested. Him and 4 others. They're going to prison. Daniel's grip tightened slightly. Good. Good? Eli couldn't keep the bitterness out of his voice. They were trying to protect me. They came when I needed them. And now they're gone because of what you did. What we did? Daniel corrected. His eyes were clearer now, focusing with effort. Don't make me the only villain here. We all made choices. You killed people. Yes. Multiple people. Yes. Well, and you never went to the police. Never turned yourself in. You just walked away and started over like it didn't happen. Daniel was quiet for a moment. The machines beeped. Somewhere down the hall, a patient called out for a nurse.
I tried, Daniel said finally, to live with it, to be better.
But you can't wash blood off your hands by pretending it was never there. His breathing was labored now. That's why I told Catherine. Why I gave her the locations. Not to hurt Grim. To finally stop carrying it. But now everyone pays, Eli said. Everyone except you. You get to die in a hospital bed while they rot in prison.
You think dying's escape?
Daniel's eyes locked onto Eli's. You think I haven't been in prison for 28 years? Every time I looked at your mother, every time I held you as a baby, I saw their faces. The men we killed, heard their voices, carried their ghosts. His hand squeezed Eli's harder than should have been possible for someone so close to death. I wasn't protecting myself by leaving the club, Daniel continued. I was protecting you and your mother, because men like us were poison. Everything we touch dies eventually. I thought if I walked away, if I became someone else, maybe you'd have a chance to be better than I was. So why send me to them? Eli's voice cracked. Eli's. Why tell me to find the Thunder Saints if you thought they were poison? Well,
because I was dying, and you were alone, and poison's still better than nothing. Daniel coughed, wet and rattling. When he spoke again, his voice was weaker. I gambled that Grim had changed, that the club had changed, that maybe they'd give you what I couldn't, family without the blood price. They did, Eli said quietly, and now they're gone. No. Daniel's eyes were intense despite the morphine. They gave you something real. 2 days of it. That's more than most people get in a lifetime. Don't waste it being angry at me. Use it. Build something from it. He reached toward the nightstand with his free hand trembling with effort. Eli helped him, pulled open the drawer. Inside was a small lockbox. Daniel pressed Eli's hand against it. Code is your birthday, Daniel whispered. What's inside? It's the truth. The whole truth. Not the version I gave Catherine. Not the version the FBI will find. The real story. What truth? The reason Senator Hendricks is so desperate. Daniel's breathing was getting shallower. Those 5 bodies at the industrial park? They weren't criminals. They were witnesses to corruption, money laundering, election fraud. Hendricks paid us to eliminate them before they could testify. Whites. Eli felt cold spreading through his chest. You killed witnesses? We thought they were criminals. Hendricks told us they were dangerous. By the time we realized what we'd actually done, it was too late. Daniel coughed again. Blood flecked his lips. Everything you need to prove it is in that box. Bank records, communications, proof that Hendricks ordered hits on innocent people. Why didn't you give this to Catherine? Because it's a death sentence. For whoever has it, for whoever releases it. Hendricks has killed to protect this secret. He'll kill again. Daniel's eyes bore into Eli's. That's why I'm giving it to you, not to burden you, but to give you, a choice. You can bury it, protect yourself, live quiet, or you can use it, burn everything down, get justice for people who never got any. That's not a choice, Eli said. That's asking me to become you. No. Daniel smiled slightly, blood on his teeth. I'm asking you to be better than me. I buried the truth and let it rot. You have a chance to bring it into the light. His grip was weakening now. But if you do, you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. So think carefully. Promise me. You'll think carefully. I promise. Daniel's eyes closed. His breathing evened out into something that sounded almost peaceful. The monitors showed heartbeat slowing, blood pressure dropping. Grandpa, Eli said, I'm here. Did you love me? Or was I just part of the guilt you were carrying? Daniel's eyes opened one more time. Both, and that's the truth nobody wants to hear. We can love people and still damage them, can try to protect them and still destroy them. Doesn't make the love less real, just makes us human. His hand went limp in Eli's.
The monitors flatlined with a single sustained note that sounded like the end of a song nobody wanted to hear. Eli sat there holding his grandfather's hand while nurses rushed in, while the FBI agent appeared in the doorway, while the world kept moving around a moment that felt like it should have stopped everything. Daniel Mercer was dead, and Eli was alone again. They took him back to Meadowbrook Group residence at dawn. Different social worker this time, younger, looked exhausted, didn't ask questions, just filled out paperwork and deposited Eli in the same room with the same bunk beds and the same dead-eyed kids who'd been there before. Marcus looked up when Eli walked in. "Thought you got out."
"Nobody gets out," Eli said. He dropped the lockbox on his bunk. They'd let him keep it after searching it and finding only papers they didn't bother reading, and lay down facing the wall. "You okay?" Kyle asked nervously. "No." "You want to talk about it?" "No." He closed his eyes and pretended to sleep while his mind raced. The lockbox sat 6 inches from his head. Inside it was enough evidence to destroy a state senator, expose corruption that went back decades, and probably get Eli killed in the process. His grandfather had been right about one thing. It was a choice. Keep quiet, stay safe, let the guilty walk free, or burn it all down and accept the consequences. Eli had until Monday morning, 3 days, before his court hearing for violating placement. 3 days before they decided whether he went back into foster care or graduated to juvenile detention for running. 3 days to figure out who he wanted to be. He must have actually fallen asleep because when he woke, it was afternoon. The room was empty. Voices from downstairs, TV playing. The normal sounds of kids with nowhere to go killing time until they aged out. Eli sat up and opened the lockbox.
Inside were documents, bank statements showing wire transfers from shell companies to the Thunder Saints accounts. Communications, emails, letters, phone records between Senator Hendricks and various intermediaries. And photographs. Crime scene photos of 5 people who'd been murdered and buried like trash. But there was something else too.
A letter, handwritten, recent. "Eli, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Good. I've been dying slow for too long.
You have a decision to make and I won't be there to help you make it. But I can tell you what I learned too late. Silence is its own kind of murder. Every day I didn't speak up about what we did. I killed those people again. Let their families suffer again. Chose my comfort over their justice. You're young enough to choose different. Brave enough to do what I couldn't. Whatever you decide, know this. I loved you. Imperfectly. Destructively. But real. And the Thunder Saints, grim especially, they're not the men they used to be. They came for you when nobody else would. That means something. Don't let my mistakes be the only thing you inherit from me. Take the good parts too. The loyalty. The fight. The refusal to quit even when quitting makes sense. You're stronger than I ever was." Grandpa Eli read it twice, 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. He looked at the evidence spread across his bunk. Enough to bury Hendricks. Enough to potentially free Grimm and the others if it proved they'd been lied to about who they were killing, or enough to paint bigger targets on all their backs. His phone, the burner Catherine's people had given him, sat on the windowsill where staff had left it after searching him. He picked it up. 1 number programmed in. He called it. Catherine answered on the 2nd ring.
"Eli, I heard about your grandfather. I'm sorry." "Don't be. He made his choices." Eli's voice was flat. "I need to see you. Tonight. Alone."
That's not a good idea. CPS is watching you. I have something that will finish what you started, but I need guarantees first. Silence on the other end. Then, what kind of guarantees? The Thunder Saints, the ones who got arrested. If I give you evidence that proves Hendricks lied to them about who they were killing, can you get them reduced sentences? Possibly. Depends on the evidence. It's solid. Bank records, communications, everything you need to prove conspiracy and fraud at the highest levels.
Where did you get this?
My grandfather. He kept insurance all these years. Now it's mine. Catherine was quiet for a long moment.
If this is real, if you're telling the truth, we're talking about bringing down a state senator. That's dangerous, Eli, for both of us.
I know. You're 13 years old. I'm 14 next week. Eli interrupted. And I'm tired of being told I'm too young to make decisions about my own life. You want justice for your husband? I want justice for 5 people who died because a politician needed witnesses eliminated. We help each other, or we both lose. Another pause. Then Catherine exhaled slowly. There's a diner on Route 66. Millie's, 30 miles west. Can you get there? Yes, that's midnight. Come alone. I'll have lawyers standing by. We do this right, we document everything, we build a case that can't be ignored. And the Thunder Saints? I'll push for reduced sentences. Voluntary manslaughter instead of first-degree murder. They'll still do time, but years instead of decades. That's the best I can offer. It's enough. Eli hung up. He had 8 hours to figure out how to sneak out of a locked group home, travel 30 miles without a car, and meet a woman who'd spent 3 decades hunting the men who'd become his family. Simple. He waited until 11 p.m. when staff did final bed checks. Mrs. Hendricks, no relation to the senator, Eli had confirmed, walked through, counted heads, turned off lights. Eli lay still until her footsteps faded down the stairs. Then he got up, grabbed the lockbox, and went to the window. Same window he'd escaped through before. The bars were still loose. Marcus sat up in his bunk. You're leaving again. Yeah. You're going to get yourself killed. Probably. What's in the box? Eli looked at him. Something worth dying for. Marcus studied him for a moment. Then he climbed down from his bunk, walked to his dresser, pulled out a battered leather jacket that looked like it used to belong to someone bigger. My uncle's, Marcus said quietly. The one who died. He'd want someone to use it who's actually going somewhere. He handed it to Eli. The jacket was old, worn, smelled like cigarette smoke and gasoline. It fit perfectly. Thank you, Eli said. Don't thank me. Just don't die. Marcus climbed back into his bunk. And if you do make it out of whatever crazy shit you're doing, maybe come back and tell us how you did it. Why? Because we're all stuck here too. Nice to know someone escaped. Eli nodded, pulled on the jacket, climbed through the window and dropped to the ground outside. The night was cold, stars overhead. No moon, just darkness and the distant sound of highway traffic. He started walking. Route 66 was 5 miles east. He could hitchhike from there. Dangerous, but less dangerous than what was waiting at the diner. He'd walked maybe 2 miles when headlights appeared behind him. Eli tensed, ready to run, but the vehicle slowed as it approached. A truck. Old Ford F-150. And behind the wheel, Torch. The biker pulled alongside him, leaned across to roll down the passenger window. You gonna walk all night, or you want to ride? Eli stared at him. You're supposed to be in federal custody. Got released 6 hours ago. Bail. Sophia worked some kind of legal magic. Torch jerked his head toward the truck. Get in before someone sees you. Eli climbed in. The truck smelled like motor oil and coffee. A thermos sat in the cup holder. How'd you find me? Eli asked. GPS tracker in your shoe, remember? Plus Sophia's been monitoring CPS communications. We knew when they brought you back to Meadowbrook. Torch pulled back onto the road. Where are we going? Millie's Diner, Route 66. That's 30 miles. I know. What's at Millie's? Eli looked at him. The end of this. Torch didn't ask more questions, just drove in silence while the Oklahoma night rolled past, and the lockbox sat heavy on Eli's lap. After 20 minutes, Torch spoke. Grimm's still locked up. Reaper 2. Federal prosecutors pushing for maximum sentences. Says we're examples of what happens when criminals think they're above the law. Catherine Voss is going to help, Eli said. If I give her this evidence, she'll push for reduced charges. What evidence? Eli opened the lockbox, showed him the documents. Torch read while driving, his expression getting darker with each page. Your grandfather kept all this? Torch asked. Insurance policy, in case the people who hired you ever came back. Smart man. Torch was quiet for a moment. This proves Hendricks lied to us. Proves we thought we were killing criminals, not witnesses. Will that help in court? Maybe. Might knock first-degree murder down to manslaughter. We'd still do time, but yeah, it'd help. Then it's worth it.
Vamos dreamosan. You know Hendrik will come after you for this, Torch said. Man like that doesn't let evidence like this surface without a fight. I know. You're 14 years old. Next week, Eli corrected. And I'm tired of people telling me I'm too young to fix the messes adults made. Torch almost smiled. You sound like your grandfather. Same stubborn bullshit. They drove the rest of the way in silence. Millie's diner appeared like a beacon in the darkness. Neon sign flickering, parking lot mostly empty. The kind of place that stayed open all night for truckers and insomniacs, and people running from things they couldn't name. Torch pulled into the lot but didn't park near the entrance. I'm coming in with you, she said alone. Yeah, well, I'm not letting you walk into another trap. I'll stay back. But I'm there if things go sideways. Eli looked at him. Why are you doing this? You're out on bail. You should be staying low, not helping me break more rules. Torch lit a cigarette, took a long drag, exhaled slowly. Torch lit a chataye bam. Because 28 years ago I helped bury 5 people and told myself it was just business, just following orders, just making money. He looked at Eli. I won't make that mistake again. You're family, and family doesn't walk away, even when walking away makes sense. They got out of the truck. The diner was nearly empty, a tired waitress behind the counter, a truck driver in a corner booth. And in the back, sitting alone with a cup of coffee, Catherine Voss. She looked up when Eli walked in. Her eyes flicked to Torch, then back to Eli. I said alone. He's with me, Eli said simply. Catherine studied them both for a moment, then gestured to the booth. Sit. They sat, Torch on the outside, blocking easy access to Eli, protective even in his body language. Eli set the lockbox on the table. Everything you need is in here: bank records, communications, proof that Hendricks ordered the execution of witnesses, proof that he lied to the Thunder Saints about who they were killing. Catherine opened the box carefully, pulled out documents, read for 5 minutes in silence. Her coffee went cold. Her expression went from neutral to shocked, to something that looked like vindication. This is, she whispered, this is everything. Will it help them? Eli asked. Grimm and the others? Yes. This proves they were deceived, that they thought they were eliminating criminals, not innocent witnesses. It's not a full defense, but it's significant mitigation. She looked up. They'll still do time, but years, not life. Maybe 5 to 10 on voluntary manslaughter charges. And Hendricks goes to prison, forever. This evidence is ironclad. Eli leaned back against the worn vinyl booth, felt exhaustion hitting him like a truck. Then do it. Release everything. Let the world see what he did. The moment we do this, you become a target, Catherine said quietly. Hendricks has resources. I've been a target since I walked into that garage, Eli interrupted. At least this way it means something. Catherine looked at Torch. You understand what this means for the club? This goes public. The Thunder Saints' history goes public. Every murder, every crime, everything gets exposed. Good, Torch said. Let it burn. We've been hiding long enough. Catherine pulled out her phone, made a call. When she spoke, her voice was clear and firm. It's Catherine. I have the evidence. All of it. Start preparing the press conference for tomorrow morning. We're going live. She hung up, looked at Eli. It's done. By noon tomorrow, this will be national news. Hendricks will be arrested. The Thunder Saints will have grounds for appeal. And you, she paused, you'll be the kid who brought down a senator. I'll be the kid with nowhere to go, Eli corrected. CPS is still going to ship me back into the system. About that. Catherine reached into her bag, pulled out legal documents. I've been working on something. Emergency guardianship petition, filed on behalf of the Thunder Saints MC. Sophia's been coordinating with me. If the judge approves, and with this evidence showing the club was manipulated into crimes they didn't fully understand, there's a chance they'll grant temporary custody to a designated guardian. Who? Eli asked. The diner door opened, and Grimm walked in. He looked rough, unshaven, exhausted, wearing the same clothes from his arrest, but his eyes were clear and focused on Eli. They let me out 2 hours ago,
Grim said. Bail hearing. Sophia convinced the judge I wasn't a flight risk. He walked to the booth, and before they locked me up, I filed paperwork naming me as your legal guardian. I'm not your blood. I'm not clean. I'm probably going to prison. But until that happens, if you'll have me, you've got a home. Eli stared at him. Why? Because your grandfather asked me to give you a chance. Because you earned a place in the club. Because you're family. Grim's voice was rough. And because I owe it to Danny. I owe it to those 5 people we killed. I owe it to everyone we hurt. Helping you doesn't erase that. But maybe it's a start at building something better from the wreckage. Eli felt something breaking open in his chest. Not grief this time. Something else. Something that felt dangerously like hope. What happens if you go to prison? Eli asked. Then Sophia becomes guardian, and Torch, and the rest of the club. You'll always have somewhere to go. Grim sat down in the booth. I can't promise you perfect, can't promise you easy, but I can promise you won't be alone. The waitress appeared with coffee, poured for everyone without asking, left the pot on the table. The diner hummed with late-night silence and fluorescent lights and the sound of trucks passing on the highway outside. I need to know something, Eli said quietly. The bike, my grandfather's Harley. What happens to it? It's yours, Grim said. Always was. We're keeping it at the garage until you're old enough to ride it legal, but it's yours. And if I want to ride it before that? Torch smiled slightly. Then we teach you on back roads where cops don't patrol. Family tradition. Catherine gathered the documents carefully. I need to get these to my attorneys. Start building the case against Hendricks. She looked at Eli. Thank you for trusting me, for giving me closure, for helping me bring David home. Will you be okay? Eli asked. After all this, no, Catherine said honestly. But I'll be better than I was. And sometimes that's enough. She stood, paused, then reached out and squeezed Eli's shoulder. Your grandfather was a complicated man. Murderer and father, killer and protector. Both things true at once. But the last thing he did, giving you this evidence, trying to make things right, that matters. Remember that when you think about him. She left. The 3 of them sat in the diner booth. An aging biker with blood on his hands, another facing prison time, and a 14-year-old kid who'd just burned down a senator's life. And for the first time in days, Eli felt something like peace. What now? He asked. Now we go home, Grim said. Get you settled. Tomorrow the world explodes and we deal with the fallout. But tonight you get to be a kid who doesn't have to carry everything alone. They paid for coffee they'd barely touched and walked out into the Oklahoma night. Torch's truck sat under a flickering streetlight like something out of a painting. As they drove back toward Tulsa, Eli watched the landscape roll past. Empty plains, dark sky, stars overhead. And somewhere ahead, a garage full of broken men trying to build something worth saving. His phone buzzed. Text from Sophia. Judge-approved emergency guardianship. You're officially under Thunder Saint's protection until further notice. Welcome home, kid. Eli showed it to Grim. The old biker nodded once. You know what this means? Rules, structure, school, chores, respect, the whole 9 yards. I know. You fuck up. There are consequences. You run. We come after you. You lie. We call you on it. I understand. Good. Grim was quiet for a moment. Then, your grandfather left you more than that evidence, left you his cut, the patch, his place in the club. When you're ready, and only when you're ready, it's yours to wear. I'm not a biker, Eli said. No, but your family, that's what matters. They pulled into the garage just before dawn. The sky was turning gray at the edges. Inside, 5 Harleys sat waiting. Someone had cleaned Eli's grandfather's bike, polished the chrome until it gleamed. Torch handed Eli the keys. Want to hear it one more time before we all crash. Eli took the keys, walked to the bike, climbed on, turned the key. The engine roared to life, and standing in that garage surrounded by men who'd killed and lied and suffered and tried, imperfectly, destructively but genuinely, to protect him. Eli finally understood what his grandfather had been trying to teach him all along. Family wasn't about blood. It was about who stayed when the world gave you every reason to leave. It was about who taught you to fix broken things. It was about who stood beside you when the darkness came and said, "You're not fighting this alone." 6 months later, the courtroom was packed. Senator Robert Hendricks sat at the defense table looking 20 years older. His lawyers shuffled papers. Reporters filled the back rows. And in the front, Catherine Voss sat with her adult children, watching justice finally arrive. The judge read the verdict. Guilty on all charges. Life in prison without parole. Catherine cried. Her children held her. And in the hallway outside, Eli stood with Sophia watching it on his phone. "He's done," Sophia said. "It's really over." The Thunder Saints' sentencing had happened 2 weeks prior. Voluntary manslaughter, 7 years each. With time served and good behavior, they'd be out in 5. Grim had hugged Eli before they took him back into custody. "Keep the garage running, keep yourself safe, and don't do anything stupid until I get back." "Define stupid," Eli had said. "Anything I would do." "That's everything." "Exactly. So be better than me." Now Eli stood in that courthouse hallway, wearing his grandfather's leather jacket, carrying the weight of what had happened and what was still to come. His court hearing for guardianship was next week. Sophia was confident the judge would grant permanent custody to the Thunder Saints MC, specifically naming Torch as primary guardian with Sophia as co-guardian during Grim's incarceration. "You ready to go home?" Sophia asked. Home. The word still felt foreign, but less foreign than it used to. "Yeah," Eli said. "I'm ready." They drove back to Tulsa in Sophia's car. Eli watched the Oklahoma landscape roll past. 6 months ago, he'd been nobody. Alone. Desperate. A kid with a backpack full of tools and nowhere to go. Now he had a place. People who cared whether he came home. A room above a garage that smelled like motor oil and coffee and possibility. When they pulled up, the garage was lit despite it being Sunday. 3 bikes parked outside. Torch's truck. And standing in the doorway, waiting, was Torch himself along with 2 other club members who'd been cleared of charges. They'd proven they hadn't been part of the murders. "Heard about Hendricks," Torch said when Eli got out of the car. "Figured you'd want to celebrate properly." "What does that mean?" "Well," Torch grinned. "Means we teach you to ride, for real this time. Not in a parking lot. Real roads." Eli looked at Sophia. She sighed. "I'm supposed to say no. As your guardian, I'm supposed to insist this is dangerous and irresponsible." "But," Eli asked, "but you've already survived worse than a motorcycle lesson, and these men will protect you better than anyone." She handed Eli a helmet. "Don't die. I just got all the paperwork finished." They spent the afternoon on back roads teaching Eli to shift, to lean into curves, to feel the bike beneath him like an extension of his own body. He fell twice. Got back up twice. By sunset, he could handle the Harley at 30 miles per hour without wobbling. That night, they sat in the garage drinking coffee while classic rock played low through speakers someone had finally fixed. Eli worked on rebuilding a carburetor while Torch smoked and told stories about the old days. The real stories, not the sanitized versions. Stories about mistakes and regrets and the long road toward trying to be better. "You think Grim will be okay in prison?" Eli asked. "Grim? He'll run the place within 6 months. Man's been through worse." Torch flicked ash into an old coffee can. "He asked me to tell you something, though, before they took him in." "What?" "He said your grandfather was the best brother he ever had, and you're carrying that legacy forward. Said he's proud of you." Eli looked down at the carburetor in his hands. Grease under his fingernails. Scars on his knuckles from months of working with tools. "I'm not like my grandfather," Eli said quietly. "No," Torch agreed. "You're better. You chose to burn everything down and face the consequences instead of burying the truth and hoping nobody noticed. Takes real courage to do that. Or stupidity. With family, it's the same thing." They worked in comfortable silence after that. The garage warm, the bikes gleaming. The knowledge that somewhere across the country families were finally burying their dead with closure and dignity and answers they'd been denied for decades. The cost had been high. Grim behind bars. Reaper. 3 others. Daniel Mercer dead. Eli's childhood stolen by violence and systems that didn't care. But there was something else too.
Something being built in this garage between damaged men and a kid who'd learned that salvation doesn't come easy and family isn't clean, and sometimes the only way forward is through the fire. 2 years later, on Eli's 16th birthday, Grim was released early for good behavior. He walked out of federal prison to find Eli waiting on the rebuilt 1984 Harley FXR, wearing his grandfather's patch sewn onto a new leather cut. "You learned to ride," Grim said. "Torch taught me, and about 50 hours of falling down. That's how you learn. Get hurt, get up, keep going." They rode back to the garage together, Grim on a borrowed bike, Eli leading the way. The Oklahoma sun was setting, turning the sky orange and purple and gold. The highway stretched out ahead of them like possibility. Inside the garage, the rest of the club was waiting. Torch, Reaper, Sophia, and a dozen others who'd slowly joined over the years. Not criminals this time, but men and women looking for the same thing Eli had been looking for, a place to belong. They'd rebuilt the Thunder Saints from the ground up. No more illegal work, no more violence for pay. Just mechanics, brotherhood, and the stubborn refusal to let the past define the future. Grim looked around the garage at the changes, at the people, at Eli standing there wearing his grandfather's legacy. "Danny would be proud," Grim said quietly. "He'd be horrified," Eli corrected. "But yeah, maybe proud too." They opened beers, soda for Eli, he still had 2 years before that was legal, and toasted to the dead, to the living, to the long road behind and ahead. And when everyone else had gone home, and it was just Eli and Grim sitting in the garage beneath fluorescent lights, while rain started tapping on the roof outside, the old biker finally said what he'd been holding for 2 years. "I'm sorry," Grim said, "for everything, for the murders, for putting you in danger, for not being honest from the start." "I know," Eli said. "I don't know if I can ever make it right." "You can't. Nobody can. But you can keep trying." Eli looked at him. "That's what you taught me. Not that good men don't make mistakes, but that making mistakes doesn't mean you stop trying to be good." Grim nodded slowly, didn't trust his voice. They sat in silence for a while. Then Eli stood, grabbed 2 wrenches from the toolbox, handed one to Grim. "Come on," Eli said. "That Sportster in the corner's been sitting for 3 months. Let's get it running." They worked through the night like they'd worked that first night years ago. But this time there was no deadline, no desperation. Just 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided that was enough to build on. By dawn, the Sportster was purring like new. And outside, the Oklahoma sun rose over a city that had changed, that had seen corruption exposed and justice served and families given closure. A city where a motorcycle club had transformed from killers into guardians, imperfect, damaged, carrying scars that would never fully heal. But there, still fighting, still protecting, still believing that family, real family, chosen family, the kind you build from broken pieces, was worth the blood and tears and years it took to create. Eli wiped his hands on a rag, looked at the bikes lined up in the garage, and felt something he'd been too afraid to feel for most of his life. Home. Not perfect, not clean, but real. And sometimes, if you're lucky, if you fight hard enough, if you refuse to give up even when giving up makes sense, real is enough. The Harley sat waiting, polished, ready. A machine brought back from death by a kid who'd been dying himself when he walked through those garage doors years ago. He climbed on, fired it up. The engine roared, and Grim stood beside him, hand on the gas tank, looking at Eli the way his grandfather must have looked at him decades ago. "Ready?" Grim asked. "For what?" "The rest of your life. It's not going to be easy, but you won't do it alone." Eli looked around the garage, at the tools, at the bikes, at the patch sewn on his cut that read, "Thunder Saints MC, earned not given." "Yes, Eli said. "I'm ready." He rolled out into the Oklahoma morning, Grim following on his own bike, and together they rode into whatever came next. Behind them, the garage doors stood open, waiting. Because that's what family does. It waits. It protects. It shows you how to fix broken things. And when the world tries to destroy you, it stands between you and the darkness and says, "Not this one. This one's ours." The Thunder Saints MC still operates out of that garage on Route 66.
If you're ever passing through Oklahoma and your bike breaks down, you might see them, might hear stories about a kid who walked in with nothing and walked out with everything, about men who chose redemption over escape, about family that isn't blood but runs deeper than any vein. They'll fix your bike. They won't ask too many questions. And if you're lucky, if you're really lucky, they might tell you the truth nobody wants to hear. We're all broken, every single one of us. But broken things can still run, can still protect, can still love. You just have to find the right hands to help you rebuild.